very, very shortly. And I really have to hustle with my. It's 5 already. My God, where's the time go? Got it. Come on. Come on. Oh, there we go. Turn the sound down. Minimize groups. Other side. Here we are. Share. Copy link. Oh, they don't make this easy. Getting in there? Okay. I didn't set it up, but you know how to do it.
No, I have to do some more.
So we are sharing to our national outlets right now. We hope. We hope. There it goes. Do one at a time. Unlike that's going to be on. If you're not going to be on, push it over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I can unplug it.
Maybe unplug it. I'm sorry. If you can't do it, just let it go.
Disconnect. Oh boy, that wasn't good. Well, actually, I have to. Cutting down on the sound. I'm not sure why. Even though this might look terribly bad, Kevin, compared to your first visit, which again was in the infancy of this, we now share the program to, on a conservative week, no pun intended, about 90 different places across Facebook. We have 2 global internet radio outlets and a TV outlet.
Wow.
But other than that, we have not grown. Other than that,
It's good. Well, it's kind of like an ingrown hair, you know, like
It just
it
keeps-
grew and then it went back in. So
it grew and then it gets
Yeah.
painful. It grows
Dang.
and then it gets really, really annoying. Itchy and annoying. Wow, people are getting a very special pre-show today, talking about ingrown hairs and all kinds of fun stuff. Oh, the pre-show just brings us such joy, doesn't it? Because heaven forbid Facebook would allow you to hit one button and build a list and, you know, share to multiple places. That would be terrible if that happened. Best programmers on the planet, but we can't do that for you. Crazy. Come on, we're almost there. Come on. What do we got? Have our revolution group in New Jersey. They haven't kicked us out yet. There's still time. The day is young. Come on. See if they allow that. Almost there. Come on. really slow, really, really slow. Man. Okay, that's those. Almost there, kids, almost there. Share, page, post, share, page, change, share, post. Here goes group sharing. Now this is going to get quick. Done very, very shortly with this bit. I'm tempted to share every single week to that one conservative group. I never do it. I think I might have snuck in there one week. Surprisingly, they did not kick me out. There's the New Deal Democrats. Hello, New Deal. One of our largest groups, actually. The AOC Progressives. Okay. We will be live in 3, 2, 1.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know
and young enough to do.
Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. But it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight?
A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right.
A loyal man who'll bring the job a fresh new point of view. Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. Cause it's Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed?
It's promised in the Bill of Rights to which we must be true.
So it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you. And it's Kennedy, 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 for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair?
We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy and a change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you. Yes, it's Kennedy, 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 for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Welcome from my humble second bedroom here in the Bethlehem Landfill Township, a wholly owned subsidiary of Waste Management Company, since they bought our township council and bought our last election. We don't live in a municipality anymore. We live in a district owned by a landfill company. And I'm going to continue to say that until somebody can prove me different. But that said, from our second bedroom here in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in these United States, part of this planet Earth, the only one. We have the third rock from the sun in the Terran solar system, part of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the Kennedy Effect for the 5th of December, 2021. Only 3 live shows remaining on the schedule for 2021. This, obviously, right now, we're right in front of you. And next Sunday and the Sunday after, and that is it. It is holiday time, kids. We hope you had a wonderful and safe and healthy Thanksgiving, and we will wish you this the same for Christmas and New Year's as well. Since we last talked, the decorating has continued. I think we might be done. It is a Christmas wonderland here in our humble little home here in the Saucon Valley, but also a very quick semi-personal note. Just this past Thursday, so 3 days ago, I got my 3rd COVID shot, my booster shot. And I am just as stunningly gorgeous as I was before that shot. It has not changed me. My DNA is no different. I am not a different human being. I do not have a chip in me. Nothing has changed. I didn't even feel it. I was tired, very, very tired, and a bit of a sore arm for whatever muscles left in this arm. And that was it. So, folks, every week I sit here and I ask you to please go get vaccinated, and I'm going to continue to do so. I am now 3 shots in. I think the 3rd shot still needs the 2 weeks to settle in, but for all intent and purpose, I am as fully vaccinated as humanly possible, and I wish the same for you. I end usually every program by reminding you that we are a community. We are a society. We are not a collection of rugged individuals, the way Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan tried to convince us. We do have things in common. If my house burns, my neighbor is in trouble, and vice versa. We are a community. We are a society. This is a very, very simple thing that we can do for each other, is to get vaccinated. And if you're one of the good folks who is absolutely sick to death, no pun intended, of this virus and these guidelines and all of the, and you just want to go back to the way things were before we ever knew what COVID was, then get vaccinated. It's very, very simple. It's very simple. And it doesn't hurt. Well, I mean, it pinched a bit. And after the second one, I did get quite ill, but it lasted for about 12 hours and we were all fine. So no problem. I'm begging you, please get vaccinated. Let's get through the business end of the program. We shared this week, I will tell you in just 1 minute because I forgot to look, 96 different places across the vast Facebook universe. Wherever you might be watching on Facebook, we thank you for being there. Every single one of you is important to us. This is a very homemade, grassroots, home done, super budgety kind of thing. If you weren't watching, if you weren't listening, if you weren't interacting, calling, comments on everything that we that we post, he said, on the Facebook page, we could not do this if you were not there. So wherever in the nearly just shy of 100 places that the program has been shared about this week, we thank you so very much. If you would like to come over to our home group Facebook page. The graphic is right up there on your screen. That other side of information, that is where we will see you in the chat. You can ask questions, make comments, and you know I will read them. Agree or disagree, we will read your comments. If you want to be part of the program, it's a great way to do it. It's a passive way to do it. I will see your questions, I will see your comments, and you can be part of the program. You can interact with our guest and me and George and the world. No pressure, just a little tiny planet called Earth. Our friends, family, sisters, brothers at hot101.net, thank you for being with us yet again and for allowing us into your world for a few hours on a Sunday evening as you perhaps prepare for work, get ready to go back to school, do some Christmas present wrapping or getting dinner together, whatever it is that you might be doing. We're welcoming us onto your desktops, your laptops, your tablets, your phones, and Bluetoothing through the car, and of course my new favorite game, and that is to say, hey Alexa, play hot101.net. Someday somebody is going to get me on a comment here on Facebook and say you triggered my Alexa. That's my goal. I'm really trying to do that. I'm going to be really, really happy when it finally happens. It is a immature, childish little game, and I'm enjoying it thoroughly. It is just part of it. If you don't know how to listen to hot101.net, it is very, very simple. The website is our name. It's hot101.net. If you have an Apple device, go to the Apple App Store and search for the hot101.net app. You can hear us there. If you have an Android device, go to the Google Play Store. You can find us there. And any other type of device, you can also use the TuneIn radio app. Go up to the search bar, search for hot101.net. And again, as I said, hey Alexa, play hot101.net. And of course, our friends and family at TCP, the cultured professional from Lancaster, their worldwide radio outlet, WTCP, their very, very large Facebook presence, and of course, the Roku channel for TCP. So we thank you all for being here. We will take your calls. We always take your comments and questions. You can tweet us, you can email me, you can call us later in the program. Just be a part of it. My guest has been entirely too patient, sitting there waiting for me as I ramble on. If you remember the infancy of this program, and I do mean infancy, we couldn't have been more than, 3 or 4 weeks into the program. One of our very first guests was Kevin Skoglund, and he is kind enough to return to us yet again. Our program has grown a slight bit since then. Patricia in the comments says I triggered her cat, but not her Alexa. We'll get there. We're trying. I'm gonna turn on somebody's Alexa. I'm gonna be really damn happy about it when I do it too. I'm gonna be very, very immaturely and childishly happy about it. But Kevin was kind enough to be one of the very first guests on this program. I think, in fact, it's very possible, as I recall, that Kevin may have been the second overall guest that we ever had on the program. It's possible. Might have been third, but very, very early on. Takes you less than a handful of fingers to count when Kevin was with us. And he's kind enough to come back with us again. And here's what's great about having Kevin on. Very much the way I approach the program is to not, it's going to sound a lot worse than I mean it, is to not overly prepare. I enjoy the beauty of the extemporaneous conversation. The fact that one answer might lead us down a road of just a wondrous opening, or I should say wide opening, all over the place kind of discussion. I happen to enjoy that part of it. It's part of the strength, I think, of our program is the length of it. And the fact that we can go down all of these so many different roads. And Kevin, thank God, is patient enough to deal with that. And, he doesn't have, you might underneath the camera there might have volumes and volumes of notes, but generally no. And so we get to have a very organic conversation, and I happen to enjoy that a great deal. And thank God Kevin's patient enough to do it, and that we're friends enough to do it. So I'm very honored by that. And thank you for being back and rejoining us on the program. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be back and see how much the show has grown.
Well, We have just a tiny bit. I'm still no smarter than I was when I started, but I'm here, and the audience has grown, the outlets have grown. Again, folks, we shared the program on Facebook to 96 places before we started today. 96, I believe. The first time Kevin was with us, it may have been maybe 20, maybe. I'm not even sure it was that many. So 96, not bad. 2 global internet radio outlets, a TV outlet, not so bad. We're doing, and we couldn't do it without you folks. If you weren't there listening, nobody would want to pick the show up, trust me. So Kevin, please remind everyone, who is Kevin Skoglund and how did you get here?
Sure. So I am a voting machine expert. I know a lot about elections in general, but really have tried to focus on the technology that goes into it. And that's turned out to be a very important thing for the last year, because there's been so much misinformation flying around about different voting machines and about different, theories about what kind of fraud might have occurred with those voting machines, and how do we know they weren't hacked, and things like that. So it's been a very busy year. I think, leading into November 2020, we spent a lot of time, so the election integrity community spent a lot of time trying to secure our elections and trying to get people off of paperless machines and into something that produced a paper ballot that we could recount and have as evidence of every voter's intent. And I at least naively thought that after we made that big push that we'd get to November and then we could all just take a holiday and have a little break. But it hasn't turned out that way. It's been a whole year of working on this and trying to get out good information and refute the bad information. So it's nice to be on the other side of information now to talk about it.
Let me start with what I think is what I hope will be both an easy question and yet one that will lead us into hours of wonderful discussion. Was the 2020, and I know we're going back over a year already, but was the 2020 election, as the federal government itself has said, or at least elements of it, and Senate committees and so on, was it the most secure in American history?
I've heard that by people. I think Chris Krebs from Cybersecurity Infrastructure, CISA, said that at one point. And I don't know if you could go back to the beginning, of the founding of the country. Perhaps there was, something in a low tech world that was, but since the technology age, since let's say 1970, I feel very confident in saying it was the most secure that we've had. And that's because we did spend a lot of energy trying to secure it ahead of time. There were a lot of people really working on this. And the biggest push by far was trying to get rid of the paperless machines. We had a real problem that we kind of woke up to in 2016. And a lot of people had known about it ahead of time, but it kind of became front page news after 2016, was that there were these paperless machines everywhere. In Pennsylvania, we have 67 different counties, and I believe 60 of them had paperless machines. There were only like 7 that had some kind of a paper ballot as evidence of a voter's intent. And so we made a big push to try and across the country, including in Pennsylvania, to replace those machines with new machines that were updated. They had better security, and also, most importantly, they had this paper trail. And that's super important because that's the evidence of the election. No matter what the machine says, doesn't matter if the machine malfunctions, it doesn't matter if it flat out lies to you about what the results are. If it's been hacked, you have those paper ballots that you can go back to, and that's key. That provides the durable evidence of voter intent. So I think it was. I think the fact that we did that, and we did lots of things like getting counties and states to stop using modems and connecting their voting systems to modems. That was something I worked a lot on. Those kinds of things that we did I think really helped raise the bar on this last election. So I would say yes.
I don't think it is anything short of quite potentially, and I actually don't say this with any glee or joy. It is at a very minimum ironic that what is generally perceived of, and especially someone as deep into this as you are, that we may very well have had the single most secure election, at least in a technology age, under an administration that did everything to try to condemn it.
Right.
I mean, the irony is almost inescapable. Do you find that as ironic as I do?
Yeah, I mean, it is. But I mean, thank goodness, right? I mean, it's a good thing that we did put in all that work. You know, one of the things that we're seeing now in a lot of places is people saying, well, why can't we vote online? Why can't we vote by smartphone? And I just think back to November 2020 and think, oh my goodness, can you imagine if we were voting online, if we were voting, you know, where there was a real potential for hacking, and you know, the evidence was much weaker for what voters wanted, and I think it would have been a nightmare. I think we had the right security profile, I guess, to meet the challenge of 2020, and thank goodness we did, because it turned out we needed it.
Was it your experience that the outside interference efforts in 2020, shouldn't just say 20, in 2020 were as prolific, as deep, dare I even say as effective in 2020 as they were in 2016?
When you say outside efforts, you're talking about foreign nation state involvement?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, yes, generally there, we know, as you know, and as most people listening probably know, that it was, some of these groups are considered to be supported by their governments, but you know, wink, 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 not really. They're
Right.
independent actors and so on and so on. But yeah, I think generally speaking, in all honesty, we are talking about foreign governments here.
Yeah, I think what we saw was lots of probing, lots of, you know, sort of checking the doors to see if the doors were locked. We don't have any evidence of actual hacking of voting machines. There's some voter registration databases that look like that they may have been accessed. It's hard to tell exactly to what extent. Some of that's, you know, kept under wraps so that we don't really know. But I think that definitely there was a similar presence to 2016. I think, you know, it's probably quibbling to say whether it was a little more or a little less, but I think clearly our elections are ripe targets for foreign adversaries, and they see that and know that. And I think that's just going to be the status quo going forward. I think we can just expect that from election to election, especially the presidential elections.
Technology is your thing. It is you have a subset of experience and information within a subset of information. It's voting, but within that subset is the technology behind it. How hard have you found it in your experience and in your work to convince folks to almost de-escalate the technology, to kind of uninvent the wheel necessarily, to go back to paper, or at a very minimum include paper? Ireland used internet-based completely electronic voting for one election cycle and then threw the machines out. They literally sold them for scrap metal. Israel refuses to use electronic voting machines. Everything is done by paper for exactly the same reasons that you and I are talking about. How hard is it to uninvent the wheel? It's kind of like the old Oppenheimer's old saying about the atomic bomb. We've crossed this bridge now, we can't go back.
Right.
Not
I think-
maybe not the most clean analogy either, but I think you know what I'm saying. How do we reinvent the technology?
I think there's kind of two halves to that. There's one half of sort of pulling people forward into the future. And that was a big challenge in 2017, 2018, where we were trying to convince people, look, you do have to give up these machines that you've been using. And yes, you're going to be using new, unfamiliar technology, but it really is better. It really is more secure. And it's the way that we need to move things. And that was a real challenge at first. There was a lot of resistance. In Pennsylvania, there were a lot of counties who were like, no, we don't want to spend the money. Our machines are perfectly fine. They've been working for 30 years without a problem. But I mean, these are 30-year-old machines. Like they're starting to fail even just because the parts are old, right? They were hard to get parts for. So they were very difficult. So that was a challenge at first. But there was some momentum that kind of built nationally. And we had a lot of messaging coming from Congress and from the different agencies. Even Donald Trump at one point said, paper ballots are the way to go.
Yes.
It really did help, kind of build some momentum that we could work on. And then at some point in Pennsylvania, they just made a directive and said, we're going to be decertifying the old machines. You better buy new ones. And everyone did. They met the deadline.
And not
so
all of
that-
that was
Yeah, go ahead.
flawless either, and which is how
No.
you and I met in the first place.
Yeah.
My humble home county here of Northampton County, by the way, the bellwether county for the 2020 presidential election. It was very widely held throughout nearly every media source that however Northampton County went was going to determine who the winner of the presidential election, who that would be. We made a decision to spend gobs and gobs of money on the single most expensive machine we could possibly purchase. But money doesn't buy you security and safety, does it, Kevin?
No, you really do have to, be strategic about it and think about what you're buying. And the vendors obviously want to sell you their deluxe Cadillac product, with all the bells and whistles. But it was really instructive. I think the same machine that was purchased in Northampton was purchased in Philadelphia, and it cost Philadelphia $30 million basically to buy it. Philadelphia has 1 million registered voters to service, so that's basically $30 million to allow 1 million registered voters to vote. Pittsburgh also has about 1 million registered voters. They adopted what I think is a much more sensible approach of using ballots marked by hand and then scanned instead of these very fancy all-in-one machines that have the big HD touch screens and all this, stuff that you don't need. They spent $10 million. 10 million versus 30 million, and they're both allowing the same voters to vote, right? And experts will tell you that the Pittsburgh solution is the preferred choice. So for less money, you end up with something better. So I think that's, I think there was a lot of money that was sort of wasted, by chasing what seemed like a fancy modern solution, but is actually, you're paying for stuff you don't need.
If I recall, and I'm pulling the number a bit out of my brain, after it was all said and done, as far as the initial purchase, subsequent maintenance and programming after the absolute show that was the 2020 primary election in Northampton, the county was in for, I think, over $5 million. Do I have that, or is it worse than that?
I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was, it was somewhere in that range for sure.
Yeah, I think the initial purchase that you and I were, when we again first met in person, although we had a lot of electronic conversation, that particular council meeting, I'm sure you remember that council meeting. I think the initial purchase was in the 3.2, 3.4 range. Then the 2020 primary happened. I think I have it right that it was the primary where everything was laid bare and just everything failed.
It was November 20.
It was the 19
was when
November
everything-
19 election
The
where
machines
everything
came up with zero totals.
exactly right.
Some of the
Sorry.
candidates.
Yes, thank you for correcting me. I was ahead by one cycle.
Yeah.
And then the county had to spend another almost $2 million to fix everything that really wasn't their problem in the first place. It was the manufacturer, which is ES&S, who, by the way, the owner and president of the company sits on the Republican National Committee. Whereas the county directly north of us, as you well know, Monroe, a Republican controlled county, spent about 1.3 million, if I have that right. And again, I'm working out of my memory, for what you are talking about, which is an optical scan system. And tell folks, what is an optical scan? So let's break this down to the very, very minimum for folks who may not be familiar with you and what it is that we're discussing, the real finer points. So let's make it, let's break it down to the baser. What is an optical scan system?
So the voting machine technology right now, precinct voting machine technology that you would, go in person to your precinct and vote, comes in a couple different flavors. One of those we refer to as hand-marked paper ballots.
And they don't all taste good. And they don't, as we have found, they don't all taste good, but they do come in some flavors.
Yeah. So the hand-marked paper ballot solution is the one that fits with the optical scanner. So the idea is that you go in, you check in at the polling place, they validate that you're a registered voter and eligible to vote. They hand you a paper ballot. You walk to a table where you can then take your time, mark your ballot by just putting a dot, filling in the oval next to the candidates that you want down the page, flip it over, do it on the back. And then when you're done and you're happy with it, you walk over to a scanner, which looks a lot like a freestanding fax machine or something. It's sort of like a trash can on bottom that holds the ballots. That's the secure ballot box. And then on top is a device that actually scans it, much like you would with a fax machine or some Xerox machines, maybe, where you feed it in. You feed in the ballot. It then reads the marks on the ballot, interprets them as being votes for different candidates. And then if there are problems, it will return it back to you to fix them. But if there are no problems, it'll just count the votes, add them to the totals, and drop the ballot into the secure bin. And that's for most voters. There's also some voters who would use what's called a ballot marking device. And that's for voters, especially who have accessibility needs, blind voters, voters who have motor disabilities. They have the option of using a computer to help them to mark that ballot, because not everyone can fill in those ovals. So some voters would use that, but they would still take that ballot at the end and scan it through that optical scanner through the same process. So that's sort of flavor number one.
Would I be oversimplifying the optical scanner to say it's very much the way that we took standardized tests in high school? You have a question, you have 5 dots after it, for your 5 choices of answer, and you take a number 2 and you darken in that dot, and that's how the testing company eventually calculates your grade, so to speak, or where you placed on the exam by reading all of these.
Absolutely.
2 penciled dots.
Absolutely. The technology, though, has improved quite a bit since I was in school, at least, where now it doesn't just check for, is the oval completely filled in or not? It can actually check and see what percentage of the oval is filled in and do some cool, fancy thing like that. You can put in the ballot in any direction, and the software can flip the ballot around to make sure that it's oriented properly. Things like that technology allows us to do. But it's the same basic principle of filling in those ovals and then reading them back like a standardized test.
So that I find most people seem to be able to identify with that.
Yeah.
The standardized test. Oh yeah, I filled in 2 million little dots when I was in high school to try to tell me how smart I was, and what I had learned supposedly. 5:34 Eastern time. This is the Kennedy effect. We return to you live after a week off for Thanksgiving. We return to you heavier and full of tryptophan. But we are here nonetheless. 3 more live shows here in 2021. And I think maybe to a lesser extent, maybe a little of a lesser extent, we are quite happy to see 2021 pass by almost as much as 20. We're 2 years into this pandemic now, and it's been a long one. So go get vaccinated, folks, and let's have family gatherings again for these holidays. Let's get outside. Let's enjoy the decorations, and let's enjoy all the fun stuff that Christmas can bring us. Get vaccinated wherever you might be across the Facebook universe. Just get that much. Under 100 places this week. You can stay right where you are. We are grateful for every single group that allows us to share the program, both national, regional, and local. And we are happy for every single one of you that watches the program, whether you are with us live or whether you watch the recorded version later in the week. We could not be here if you are not there. If you would like to join the conversation, I can't say there is a conversation happening right now. There's a good number of folks watching live right on our home group page. If you would like me to ask a question of Kevin, if you want to ask me a question, if you want to agree with us, disagree with us, yell, kick, scream, tell me how dramatically handsome I am, you are welcome to do so in our live chat. You will see, come to our home group Facebook page. The graphic is right there for you to see that other side of information on Facebook. You will see the program right in line like a regular post on any other page. Tap on the video, expand it. There's the comments. You can comment, ask questions, etc., etc. Hot101.net. The name is our website address, hot101.net. Apple App Store, Google Play Store for Android, and the TuneIn Radio app. Go up to the search bar and just search for hot101.net. And of course, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net. We will come through on your desktops, laptops, tablets, phones. You can Bluetooth us through the car. And again, of course, if you have Alexa, you can tell Alexa to play hot101.net. That's probably the easiest thing to do. And of course, TCP, the culture professional from Lancaster County, a minority and locally owned business, and we are proud to be part of the TCP family. It's always great to become part of any family, but especially a local one, and a very successful one, and a grassroots and grown up from the you know built from nothing. It's impressive, and it is humbling to be part of it. We are proud to be part of the TCP family. We will open up the phone line later in the program, probably after as we enter our second hour, doing a bit of a recap with Kevin from all the way back to his first visit many moons ago. A little bit of review as to what we've been seeing in past elections, 2020 and 2021, of course. And then we will break into some of the newer legislation and newer and more current happenings right now. I have encouraged questions in the chat. Christopher has been kind enough to send us one, another former guest of the program, and somebody who will be returning somewhat soon, perhaps even to our roundtable panel for the wrap up of the year. I do want to continue going through the flavors that you mentioned, Kevin, but I never ignore a question. I can't talk about encouraging them so much and not read them. So it's a little bit of a departure from where we've been going. We'll get back to that, but let me ask this question. It might be a tad out of your purview, but will ask anyway, because if a listener asks, then I'm having at it. Your thoughts on rank choice voting? What particular challenges it might bring in a mechanized era? Or, we saw ranked choice voting actually in the mayoral primary in New York City, and it took, almost 2 weeks to determine who the winner was. It doesn't seem to me it should have been that difficult, but yet it seems to have been.
I think that's more about the administration than it is the style of voting. I think there were unique factors there. So
is ranked choice something that comes up in your work? Is it something that the technology can handle? Is it a
So for those who don't know, ranked choice voting is, instead of just voting for a single candidate and saying that this is your pick, instead you're allowed to vote for several candidates and to give them each a rank. So you can say your first choice is this person. If they were not to be viable for that, then your second choice would be, and you have the second choice. And if that person is not viable to win the election, then your third choice would be, and so on. So you go down the list, essentially saying, if I vote for my small party candidate, maybe in a race you think that you really would like to vote for one candidate, but it's not one of the major party candidates, you can still vote for your candidate. And if your candidate succeeds, great, you cast a vote for them. If not, you're not penalized. Your vote, you can still vote as a backup for one of the major party candidates. So it's very nice in that way. And we've saw a lot of talk about this over the last decade or so, and people thinking that maybe this was a good strategy for building other points of view outside the two main parties, to allow other smaller parties to have a voice and to have their constituents vote the way they want. And then it just kind of took off. Like, I've really been surprised in the last couple of years how much it's caught on. It went from just being in a few places to suddenly gaining some real popularity and really, being tried in a lot of places. A lot of the voting machine technology does support it. The ones who don't are kind of racing to add it in because it's clearly got some momentum behind it. I don't have a real strong preference myself as to whether I think it's good or bad. I can see the pros and cons to it. And I'm a little nervous about the fact that, we are going very quickly into it. I'm very interested to see when things happen, like in New York, where it did take a long time to come up with the votes. I'm interested to see kind of what those problems are and work through them so that we can sort of smooth out those pain points before we kind of roll it out to everyone. So I'm a little, I'm sort of I'm not green light, I'm not red light, I'm somewhere at the yellow light. I just let's proceed with caution. But it certainly seems to be working well in the places that's being used. So I'm optimistic.
I don't believe there's anything larger. Well, I mean, there's no city larger than New York. It's the largest city in the country, but I don't believe there's anything larger than a municipality type level that's using it at this current time. Do I have that correct? No state has adopted it.
Not sure. I'd have to go back and look. New York and San Francisco are two very prominent ones that are using it. It's used in Maine. I'd have to go back and sort of look at the full list of who's using it, because it has really just suddenly popped up in a lot of places. And maybe not for all races either. Maybe in some cases it may just be for certain types of races. But
what is your experience tell you, or what? I kind of find it strange that maybe this is a better way of asking it. I kind of find it strange that there was much made about the time that it was taking to calculate the winner in New York, but yet once that was done, we kind of didn't hear anything about it anymore. Is that something that you find kind of, I guess, odd? Maybe I'm not even sure if that's the right term, isn't it? But I don't have a better one, sadly. Isn't it a bit, odd or interesting that the national outlets seem to spend so much time on how long it was going to take to determine a winner in what I perceived to be a real, dig, a real shot at ranked choice. And then once everything was settled, we never really went back to find out why it took that long.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't followed to see. I'm sure there are sort of internal investigations and stuff going on to sort of do a postmortem and find out, how can we do better? I haven't really kept up with those, but I think there is a general expectation that's maybe not totally fair, that people want elections decided quick. They almost want it quick more than they want it right. I mean, obviously they want it both, but there's a real thought that we should somehow know on election night before we go to bed, we should know who won. And I think the last several presidential elections, certainly, but even other Senate races and House races, sometimes they're very close. And, we have to sort of allow time to count the votes and make sure that we've got them right, and to do all the double checking that has to be done. There's the certification of the election actually happens, long after election night, several weeks after election night. And there's a process of sort of double checking the work and, dotting all the I's and crossing the T's before we get there. There's a reason why and that's why. So the public is always anxious to find out if their candidate won or lost, but sometimes it just requires a little bit of patience.
What were the other flavors of voting that we were going to get through? I'm using that. I'm stealing that.
Yeah.
I want to make multiple points from now on. I'm not going to say flavors.
Yeah.
We got, I love when we get questions. I actually really do. Makes me know people are listening. But we did sidetrack there. So what were the other, if we could get back to the different other types of, or flavors of voting that you were going to run us through, please
Right.
feel free.
So the second flavor, I would say, is where instead of just a select set of voters using these ballot marking devices to help them mark the ballot, instead, all voters use those computer touch screens. So you walk into the polling place, you check in, they may hand you some kind of an activation code or some kind of a ticket or something that sort of allows you to vote on the machine. Or there may be a poll worker who enables the machine for you, but you then go from the check-in booth straight to a touch screen. So you're standing at a computer and you make the choices on the screen for how you want to vote. And at the end, you say print, and then it prints out the choices on a piece of paper. And then that piece of paper gets walked over to a scanner and scanned in. The main difference is just that instead of most voters voting with a pen and paper, most voters are voting with a touch screen. And that's a big difference. And it seems like for a lot of people, they think, oh, well, we're so used to computers, right? We use them for ATMs, and at Wawa, we order our hoagies with it. I think that it's easy to sort of overlook some of the subtleties that are there. There's a lot of concern in the election community about if the machine doesn't do its job right and it doesn't print your right choices, would you notice? Would you notice that it had made a mistake in order to correct that mistake? Because when you're using a ballot that you're marking by hand, it's just you and the ballot, right? It's very little distance between you and your choice. And you can sort of check your work and make sure you did it right. But when you do it with a computer, you're putting a piece of technology between you and that vote. And there's a lot of concern that, if it was hacked or malfunctioning, that it might not print your vote the way you intended and you might not notice. And then once it's cast, there's nothing you can do about it, right? That wrong vote is your vote. There's no way. It's anonymous at that point. There's no way to call it back and fix it. So it's not like when you're at an ATM or at Wawa, where you can correct those kinds of mistakes. Once it's cast, that's that. So that's sort of flavor number 2. And then flavor number 3 is a slight variation on that. And this is what Northampton and Philadelphia are using, where it's an all-in-one machine, where instead of walking it from the machine that's marking it over to the machine that's scanning it and counting it, they're all in one device. They're just smashed together, so that there's it's all inclusive, right? You go to the touch screen, it prints it, and then when you're done printing it, it counts it and has the results at the end as well. And there's even more concern about those devices because, well, first of all, they're super expensive, as we already talked about, but they also are that you're fully dependent on them. If they break, you can't vote. You can't, you don't have the option of switching back to a hand marked paper ballot or anything. And then a number of the security concerns about this device, now it's all in one. Now the marker and the reader are all together. If one were to hack it, you'd be hacking both of them. And that the transition between the two sometimes isn't seamless. So there's a lot of room for mischief and malfunction in those machines. And Northampton had that happen, right? In the November 2019 election, the machine appears to have printed the ballots correctly, as far as we know. We don't really know that for a fact, but it printed something and then immediately read those votes itself to count them. And when it counted them wrong. And it did not have correct tallies at the end. And the final election result was obtained by taking those ballots to a different machine and scanning them there. and getting whatever tally came off of those at that point. So it you can really see firsthand, like, when we say we went before city council, we told them, look, this is not this machine has not been used widely. Very few voters have ever voted on it that you're about to spend all this money on, and there's all these potential problems. And then guess what? It was exactly that.
It's fun. I've been involved in politics my entire life. I've told this story on this program too many times. Hopefully I don't put anybody to sleep. I ran for my first office when I was 5 years old. I ran to be the student council representative from my kindergarten class.
Did you win?
I did not. I did not. I did not.
Recount.
I remember. Yeah. Oh, please. No, there was shenanigans. There's no doubt. But it wasn't in Northampton County. No, I stood in front of the class and I said, I'm a Kennedy. We care about justice. And we care about everybody. We care about standing up for the little guy. We believe in government. We believe government works. We believe it's your voice. And this is what Kennedys do. We represent the underrepresented. And we bring voice to the voiceless. And we stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. And I still lost. So yeah, shenanigans. I claim shenanigans all the way back to an individual little piece of paper and a hat in kindergarten. But where I was going to get to, though, is that meeting, that final meeting with you, or was it the meeting before? I think you took some real personal shots, what I thought were personal shots, what I thought were direct assaults on your character and your experience and your work, that you didn't know what you were talking about. And who the hell are you to come in here and tell us what to do? And you remember what I'm talking about. And I found it very, very interesting, because I do think it's one of those things where Shakespeare was 100% correct. Thou doth protest too much.
Yeah.
And I think we knew exactly what county council was doing. This decision was made and it didn't matter. And for those of you who know the deep partisan that I am a progressive Democrat. I've been a Democrat my entire life. I believe that the Democratic Party is salvageable, restorable, and oh, by the way, the only functioning political party in the country. But this was a democratically controlled council, a Democratic executive who has since been reelected. Democrats have lost some of their edge on that council, and I think that this machine debacle is no small part of that. You took some hits. You took some serious personal, what I consider to be personal attacks. They were veiled in an era of professionalism, that it was a question of your work and what you do for a living, but it was, to me, it was blatantly personal. And again, thou doth protest too much. Is that what seems to continue to be the main defense for some of these purchases and these machines and these manufacturers, is just to shout down everyone else who knows better?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the personal attacks. I think I'm here to share what I know, and if people want to put their fingers in their ears and say la 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 and not listen, that's their choice, right? And I'm not gonna. There's nothing I can do about that, right? All I can do is try to tell those who do want to listen, what we know and what the science shows about these things. So it's fine, that doesn't bother me. I mean, obviously the vendor has an interest, vendors plural, I should say, because it's not unique to one. They all have an interest in defending their machines and trying to make a sale to a customer and trying to put down criticisms to say, oh, no, it's not that bad. It's, don't worry about this, or, the jury is out on this issue, or whatever it is. So fair enough. Like that's, they're taking criticisms of their product. They're going to defend their product. I understand. That's fine. I think, in this particular case, the machine that we're talking about is the ES&S Express Vote XL that was purchased by Northampton and by Philadelphia and Cumberland County also. And on its surface, I get the appeal.
Just to say, Kevin, real quick, I don't think it's unnotable, if I'm not creating a word. I don't think it's without note that so few counties chose this machine.
Yeah.
You know, I refer to it again, it might be a bit of a sloppy analogy, but I refer to it as the guy that walks into the party. There's 100 people in the room. You know, he walks in with his date or his wife and he says, oh, that guy's a jerk. Oh, that guy's a jerk. Oh, can't stand her. Oh, wow, what a jerk. Well, if all 100 people in a room are jerks, maybe you're the problem and not the other 100 people. So I don't think it is without note that so few counties chose that machine.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reason was the cost. I mean, 3 times the price. I mean, that really that was a lot of these counties were already balking at the price, and they weren't 100% convinced they were going to get reimbursed by the state or by the Commonwealth for their trouble. It became clearer later on that was the case, but there was a lot of concern that they would not get full reimbursement, that they might get partial reimbursement. So they were not going to go out and just buy the Cadillac machine. I mean, these are $9,000 a piece for these machines, whereas most of the machines, you know, more than the $3,000 to $4,000 range.
I think Monroe spent about 1.2 million for their optical scan machines, and they were not. Were they? Wait, now I'm forgetting. Because one of the choices during that cycle, I remember we all talked about this, was not everything was ES&S. There was another vendor that makes an optical scan system.
Oh, there's several.
I think.
Monroe uses Clear Ballot.
Thank you. They did pick a different one. I was trying to remember if they chose a different vendor or not. I was trying to remember that. Lehigh, by the way, chose a hybrid system. They did ES&S, optical scan with one Express Vote XL, I believe, per precinct that was meant to be for the unequally abled voter, if I have that correct.
Right. Yeah. Not the Express Vote XL. They picked the smaller regular Express Vote. There's a sort of a miniature model that's a little bit like a tablet. And then there's this large 32-inch touchscreen. That's the XL. That's why it has the XL in the name, is because it's so big. So
and heavy, and actually it requires quite a bit of manpower to get that thing taken around to the polling places and then set up. You actually I think you need 2 people just to carry the darn thing.
Oh, they're heavy. I off the top of my head, I want to say that they're 300 pounds or something. They're very, very heavy. They're on wheels, but wheels don't do you good when you get to a set of stairs or, you know, some of these loading bays and things.
And that might not sound like a big consideration in the expense of a machine or the ongoing expense of running an election, but it is when you can pull an optical scanner out of a box, you know, one person plug it in the wall, you're rocking and rolling, you're ready to go. Or you need 2 to 3 county workers to deploy these machines out to the how many polling places are there in Northampton? 80 something, probably more than that. I'm blanking. It's a long time. I mean, it's not, it's added expense. It's hours. It's labor, hours, money.
Yeah. So I see the appeal on the surface. You know, it's an all-in-one machine. You can just wheel in place. Once you get it there, you know, the heavy machine, once you get it in place, you plug it in and you don't have to do anything else, right? It's all just taken care of for you. A lot like the old digital recording electronic machines, the paperless machines, a lot like they were. You just wheel it in place and you're done. You know, the hand-marked paper ballot type systems that we were talking about before, they have separate components that have to be set up, you know, so it does take a little bit more work to set those up, but not a lot. But I see the appeal. I certainly see the appeal of these, but unfortunately, there's many problems with it. And as you recall, you know, we have a lawsuit that's still pending that filed well before the 2020 election, filed it actually in 2019 to begin with, because we don't believe that this particular voting machine complies with Pennsylvania law. We think that there are a number of provisions of Pennsylvania law that it violates. One of the most obvious is that it stores the votes in perfect order. Once you cast a vote, it sort of puts the ballot into a cartridge, a lot like putting trays in a cafeteria tray bin, and they kind of stack one on top of the other, and each tray pushes down the stack. It works a lot like that. So the result is that the ballots are in perfect order. And prior to this machine, Pennsylvania had the position that you did not have any kind of chronologically stored ballots, because that would potentially violate voter secrecy. If you know the order that people voted, you could potentially go into the stack and figure out, how they voted. If I saw you coming into the polling place right after me, I could just cast my vote for Mickey Mouse. If I can go through and find my vote for Mickey Mouse, then I know the ballot right above it. I know that's yours, and I can find out how you voted. And Pennsylvania Constitution has a strict requirement for absolute secrecy. Secret ballot is super important. It's a lot of how people are able to vote without any fear of coercion or bribery or anything like that is the fact that your ballot is secret. It's just between you and the ballot box. So it's super important that we don't lose that.
6 p.m. We are an hour in already. And for Kevin, it only feels like 6. That's the beauty of it. We're an hour in, entering our second hour of the program. We are back with you alive. It is the 5th of December, and this is the Kennedy Effect for the 5th of December, a Sunday. However you are spending your Sunday evening, if you're having dinner, getting the kids ready for school, wrapping presents, decorating, or just staying warm. It's getting a little chilly here in the Lehigh Valley. We appreciate you being with us. We could not be here if you are not there. Sharing the program to just around 100 places across the Facebook universe this week. I think it was only somewhere between a dozen and 20 the first time Kevin joined us. Not over. I think we're at right around 100. Might be just a hair over, hair under, somewhere in the 100 range. Wherever you are, please feel free to stay right there and enjoy the program. The reason I ask you to come to the home group page for the program so often is that I will sometimes, not too much, but sometimes I will get some, shall we say, pithy Facebook comments or Messenger. I'll get contacted directly through Messenger that, I tried to talk to you during your show. I guess you were afraid to take my question. If you are entering questions and comments at any of the other groups other than the home group, I don't see it. I simply do not see it. You stay right there and watch. Please do so. It's part of the way we support the groups that we are a part of. If you were at the New Deal Democrats or the Lehigh Valley Progressive Network, Indivisible of Narberth, any of the again, the over 90 groups that we share the program to, please stay there. However, if you enter comments and questions, I don't see them. I only see them at the graphic right on your screen, our home group page, the home, the center for all things the Kennedy Effect, and that is that other side information. So if you want to ask a question, make a comment, interact with the program, and after all, we appreciate it. We are here for you to interact with. This is not a lecture. This is interactive. Please come to the home group Facebook page, that other side of information, enter your comments and questions, agree with us, disagree, tell us your story, your voting stories, kick, scream, disagree, call me names, call me nice names. You can do that at our home group Facebook page. Hot101.net, that's our web address and our name. Apple App Store, Google Play Store, the Tune In Radio app. And you can ask Alexa to play Hot101.net and TCP, the cultured professional from Lancaster. We are happy and proud and humbled to be part of the TCP family. If you want to see the program, TCP is a place to get it, the Roku channel and the Facebook channel alike. And of course, their internet radio outlet as well, WTCP. Kevin Patricia puts a comment in the chat. secret ballot. You were mentioning the PA Constitution, which ensures secrecy in the vote. Well, Patricia says with a level of sarcasm, but she is correct. Secret ballot, unless the state legislature gets to audit, quote unquote, audit the election. How does the state constitution, how does the Republican legislature, a Republican controlled legislature, continue? Well, let me put it this. How do the two things mesh? How do you uphold the state constitution, the Commonwealth Constitution, and ensure secrecy of the vote, at the same time demanding the voting results and your social security number so we can also figure out who you voted for, and knowing the makeup of this Republican legislature and some of the cartoonish characters that are in it, probably take some sort of retribution against you if we can figure out how to do that. How do those two things mesh?
So Jeff, I have tons of concerns about this audit, if that's what it's going to be called. I'm not even sure if audit's the right word for it. And I'm very concerned about.
I haven't even been able to find the properly sarcastic word to describe it. I don't know how you describe it. It is not an audit. It's a private investigator being hired to tell your wife to see if she's cheating.
Yeah.
It is not too much above that.
I have real concerns about handing over, voter information, personal identifiable information, PII, we call it. I'm very concerned about that. I don't want my information handed over to someone else. I think there's a real reason for concern there. But I want to stress the fact that would tell them whether you voted. It would not tell them how you voted. Now, they may infer that because you're registered for a particular party that you voted for that party. I don't think that's necessarily true. That's a very reliable indicator, but it's super important that for most places, when you walk in and you cast your ballot, they know who you are when you walk in. They identify you. Then they hand you your ballot. And from that point on, your ballot doesn't have anything on it that identifies who you are. There's nothing that links it back to you. And that's super, super important. And it's very intentional on the part of election designers. So that ballot then gets dropped in the ballot box. There's no way for us to know that that's your ballot. Now, you might be able to do a write-in and recognize your handwriting or who you wrote in for. Obviously, if I'm the only person who votes for George Washington, then I can pull out my ballot and see, oh, there's my write-in for George Washington. But no one else can. No one else can say, this is Kevin's ballot. We found it. We know how he voted. That's the secret ballot part. So it's super concerning to hand over voter information and to someone who, may not have our best interest in mind, who may not protect that data. Even if they do have our best interest in mind, they may not rigorously protect that data. That's super concerning, but it doesn't mean that they violate your secret ballot. There's this little bit of a difference there between those two.
Then why ask for the social security number?
Yeah, I think as we've pushed to get paper for the votes, what we've seen across the country as people question the legitimacy of the outcomes is, first they said, oh, well, the outcomes are wrong, right? It was the computers messed up. The computers were hacked. They were fraudulent. But then places like Arizona, it's like, well, we have the paper ballots. People marked these ballots by hand, and we can see that this is how they voted. We can count those up, and that's the evidence that shows that the election was correct. And so we saw a little bit of a shift then to, oh, well, it's not that the evidence is wrong. It's that it was we incorrectly allowed people to cast votes, right? The pool of evidence that we're looking at somehow is illegitimate. And that's really, I think, a little bit of what we're seeing in Pennsylvania with this request to look at the voter rolls, is the thought that somehow voters who weren't eligible to vote voted, or that someone else voted in their name. There's a lot of efforts going on right now to like go door to door in places and actually like ask voters like, hey, did you vote? You know, and trying to sort of create this theory that maybe the paper that's in the box isn't the right paper that's in the box, right? We have good evidence, but now there's people saying, well, let's question that evidence because we're questioning who was allowed to put paper into the box. So I think that's a little bit of a shift in strategy to try and say, well, there's fraud, but it's not that the paper is fraudulent, it's that the voters were fraudulent. The eligibility was fraudulent. I think that's where they're headed.
Is there any evidence whatsoever, any at all? Yes, I'm being repetitive because I think we need to make the point. Is there any evidence whatsoever of voter fraud in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in any election, primary, local, municipal, village, statewide, 2020 federal? Any evidence of voter fraud in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania from the 2020 general election forward?
Yes, but I think we're talking about less than 6 votes. I think there have been a couple of cases that have come up.
Well, let's stop right there.
Identified and prosecuted.
Let's stop right there.
Yeah.
Not 6%.
No.
Not 600, 600,000, 6 million, 66 counties, 6 towns.
Yeah. And I'm just pulling a number out. It could be 4. You know, I don't know the exact number, but it's a very small number where there are instances where someone broke the rules and got caught and is prosecuted for it. So that has happened. We've seen that happen in a couple places. There's one instance I'm aware of in Pennsylvania. There's 2 instances in Pennsylvania, one in Nevada, and I think maybe one in Arizona. There are a few that have made the news, but it's a very small number.
One was right in Bucks County, where an older gentleman voted on behalf of his elderly mother, who was homebound, and oh, by the way, he and his mother voted for Mr. Trump.
Yeah. So there are very small cases. So it's not that it doesn't exist at all. It doesn't exist at any large scale that you would need to overturn the big elections that we're looking at. And to go even further than what you posited, I'm not aware of anything in the entire United States where there has been any evidence of wide-scale hacking, voter fraud, anything like that that would change these results. There have been a couple of issues of malfunction. There was a very notable one that happened in New Hampshire and one that happened in Michigan, and experts examined those very rigorously and came up with very good explanations for what happened, how we know that the results now are correct, and how to prevent it in the future. So there was a couple of expert reports on those 2 instances where there was malfunction. My job is to look for that kind of stuff. I love looking for malfunction and hacking and fraud, and I don't want to find it, but I'm very open-minded to it. It's certainly possible. It's possible that votes can be hacked, and that our elections can be under attack. I'm not aware of any evidence of that. After having looked for over a year, no evidence has been presented. And I've read all the court cases and all the wacky theories and followed people on Twitter. I know everything that's out there, and there's no credibility to any of it. There's no evidence. There's times when people point to things and say, hey, that's a weakness, but that's different than saying it's a weakness that was exploited. I haven't seen anything, and I'm still open to it to this day. If there's evidence out there, I'd love to see it. But after a full year, I'm convinced that we're not going to see any.
So is this supposed audit a solution in search of a problem?
Yeah, I'm really not sure what it's going to do. And I think that's kind of the theme of this last year, I think, is that, there's all this energy being put into these, wild goose chases. And the thing is, there are real problems. There are things in the technology that we need to improve, and places that still don't have paper, for example, or machines that have particular problems and flaws, or gaps in legislation that we should be fixing. In Pennsylvania, we really need to move to having risk limiting audits as a regular routine part of every election. And there's an effort underway to do that. There's pilot programs that are going on. We're going to have to pass some legislation to make that happen at some point. That's the kind of thing we should be putting our energy into, because if you collect good evidence of what the voter wants, and you have good chain of custody of that evidence, and then you audit at the end to make sure that the evidence was counted correctly and all the technology did what it was supposed to, sort of a quality control measure, then you can feel pretty comfortable that you've got the will of the voter, that the evidence that you're counting and the results that you get come directly from the voters. So I think it's a real distraction.
Was there anything from the Arizona so-called audit that you found to be legitimate?
No, nothing at all.
Was it as simple as trying to promote this continued sense that don't bother voting because it's all rigged and screwed up and illegal anyway? Or was it simply a profit-making venture for a group of hackers connected to the Republicans in Arizona? Because they made a ton of money on it.
Yeah.
They delivered absolutely nothing and cost the taxpayers countless millions, not just by getting paid, but by having the federal government and the state government come in and say, well, those machines that you just handed over to a private entity, they are no longer valid. They have been compromised. They are out of that secure chain that you just discussed. And now, by the way, you are going to have to buy all new machines, just like, oh God, now I'm going to blank on it. Damn it. Mercer County.
Fulton
County
Fulton
here
County.
in PA, that the would-be Republican comic book superhero Doug Mastriano led his own county into millions of dollars of expense by breaking the chain of security of those machines. So there's nothing in your experience that you have worked on, fill in the blank, et cetera, that shows you that there was anything gained from this Arizona audit or the still potential audit here in PA.
Yeah, no, there isn't. Arizona, I think that their original intent, I think that at least the core people who were originally involved in it really believed that they were going to uncover the truth, and that the truth was that the election outcome was wrong. I think that was their real motive. And then a lot of people jumped on that train when they saw that, hey, this is a real profitable thing. We can raise money. We can put out a fundraising page, and all the people who want this to happen will pour money to us, and we'll take a cut before we maybe give some money to the audit, or we'll fund various efforts. But clearly it's a big money maker, and we're talking millions of dollars. So there's a lot of money coming from a lot of groups. It was interesting. I think more than half of the money thereabout came from entities run by just a few people who in December had met with Trump in the White House and talked about how there was massive fraud and that the election needed to be done over, and even tossed around the idea of having the army involved in rerunning an election. And that Sidney Powell is the most famous of those. Patrick Byrne is another, and Mike Flynn, who's also very famous. So those three people contributed a ton of money. Their groups, they raised a ton of money and they contributed a ton of money towards, funding these Arizona audits. But so that's to their motives, but the actual things that they did, that's not the way that we normally audit an election. The processes were not standard processes. These were people who had no experience. I mean, just as one simple thing, normally when you would do a recount or an audit, you would have a bipartisan group that would look at a ballot and say, yes, we all agree that is a vote for candidate X. And you may say, oh, well, it's actually ambiguous, where maybe the candidate, is it X or is it Y? I see marks in both boxes, right? And a bipartisan group would sort of come to a consensus on it. If they couldn't, they'd set it aside and escalate it for someone else to look at, right? And they would come to some consensus on how those marks are. In Arizona, if anyone watched the live feed there, they had like a carousel, like a lazy Susan, and ballots just spun by counters, and a counter just marked what they saw as it flipped past. They just tried to very quickly mark, oh, I think that's a vote for this, and I think that's a vote for that. And then it was not very accurate. And then at the end, they went, do 2 out of the 3 agree? So if 2 of the 3 got it wrong, well, they went with the wrong vote, right? They didn't try and come to a consensus and like stop and look at the ballot and say, hey, why did we disagree? How do we reconcile it? So it was a haphazard process from the beginning. It was really error prone. There was no chance they could count within the margin of error.
And have you ever seen an audit where the machines were literally removed from the jurisdiction involved? Those machines, that part of that Maricopa County supposed recount / audit / TV show, those machines were removed and taken to a different state.
Well, the machines weren't, the data was. They subpoenaed the machines. That's how this all happened, was they subpoenaed them. So a court, they had the subpoena power was upheld so that they had to hand over the machines. So then cyber ninjas took the machines. They then took data off of those machines, and that data disappeared out of state somewhere else. And everyone was like,
it's kind of still
what happens to that
in the
data?
ether too. No one, to this day, no one knows where that data is.
Right.
It's still out there somewhere. Somebody's got a hold of it.
Well, and it's concerning because we've since seen instances of data being released. One of the other trouble spots, I guess I would call it, is Antrim County, Michigan, where they had some problems with their machine. And an earlier group, separate from the cyber ninjas, went in and evaluated these machines and made forensic copies of the data of the machines. When Mike Lindell held his big cyber symposium in August, that data was released to attendees. They just gave it to people. It was under court order. It was protected. It wasn't supposed to be released. It just got handed out. And then in Colorado, we saw another example where they let people come in and copy their machines and just handed that data out on the internet for anybody to take. So there's a real reason for concern to expose software, proprietary information, voter information, all that. It's a real concern to know that these people are going to be good custodians of that data.
As much as we concern ourselves, and I think justifiably so, to be honest, with hacking and or data mining, I think both are proper terms, really. Data infiltration, whatever you want to call it, from outside this nation, we really actually need to be concerned with it right here at home, is what these supposed audits show us.
Yeah. I mean, I think there should be real concern going forward about insider threats, about people who come in to say they're going to volunteer, they want to be poll workers, they want to help out. They may have a different agenda than actually helping and counting the votes. They may be hoping to videotape conversations or to expose what they think is fraud. A lot of times what we saw in the last year are people, not understanding a process and then saying, hey, look, this is fraud. Remaking ballots is a good example. Like if a ballot comes in and it's damaged and can't go through the scanner, it has to be remade so that it can go through and be scanned. To someone on the outside, it looks like you're inventing a new vote, but you're actually just, you know, duplicating it into a different form. In Arizona, they had Braille ballots that come back. Those Braille ballots have to be transferred to a different machine. To someone on the outside, it's not obvious what's happening. So my point is, I think that it's a real concern of mine going forward in 2022, 2023, 2024, that that insiders, you know, there may be people sort of coming into the process who have ill intent, and the system is not you know, it's not something we were prepared for, you know, that kind of maliciousness. You know, we've up until now, we've been able to trust that people running elections, you know, for the most part are, you know, on voter sides and trying to get the right result.
What could you do with such data? What would someone do with that type of data? What can cyber ninjas do? Again, and folks, if you don't know who cyber ninjas are, they are the company, wink, 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 because they were seem to have been created out of nowhere, and of course never did anything election related in their prior existence ever, period. But if the data that we're talking about that has gone missing, what could you do with such data? What would someone do with that?
Well,
What could you potentially do with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of different things.
I guess I'm asking because it seems to me that you would not download that data and squirrel it away, like literally to the point of leaving the state and having it sort of just disappear.
Right.
If it wasn't valuable. So what would someone do with such data? Does it help? Is it kind of like taking the pie fresh out of the oven and then deconstructing? Are we working backward, like deconstructing the parts, learning how to hack these machines? Are we tracing who's voting for whom? Are we, what would you do with such data?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the voting machine software, I think certainly reverse engineering it, figuring out how it works, figuring out what its vulnerabilities are, I think that is a real concern. I think there's also a concern of just sort of trying to learn what its flaws are, not so much so that you can write software to exploit them, but so you can complain about those flaws, right? So you can be like, oh, look, it does, you know, it has this feature, it has this problem, therefore we can't trust the election, right? It becomes a talking point, essentially. You don't actually have to do hacking. You can weaponize it by turning it into misinformation. So I think that's a real concern. And then, you know, if you do have large amounts of data and you have, you know, voter registration statistics and things like that, that falls under what we call big data, where you have large databases that you can then mine, you can pair it with other information so that you can find out, you know, who voted in this election, how they voted, you know, or you can't know what their vote was because it was a secret ballot, but you can know, you know, what their party registration was, what the turnout was, how soon did they show up, when did they show up to vote, all sorts of things like that that could be used along with other information for, you know, various types of misinformation attacks or other manipulations.
Doesn't all of this somewhat stem, or maybe even not somewhat? We've seen a massive privatization of the federal government and really government on all levels. I would argue and have argued on this program every single week that this stems very, very simply because a very small handful of really, really rich people don't want to pay taxes. So if we don't have to fund a government, we don't have to pay taxes for it. So how do we shrink government, and how do we shrink, but we don't want to pay taxes into government, but we would sure like to make money off of the people who do. And that leads to the entire privatization argument. Hasn't all of this arisen from the privatization of elections? We have turned elections. I almost said we've turned the business of elections, but really I should amend myself and say we've turned elections themselves into a business. Doesn't all of this arise from the money surrounding elections? We've turned them into a business. And if we keep the people in office who want to continue the tax cuts and the privatization and the steering of public funds into private places, it's all about privatization. Am I right or am I wrong?
I don't know. It's an interesting thought for sure.
Where there wouldn't be an ES&S
Right.
if we weren't subcontracting out elections. Elections were a purely governmental function. You may have gone to your local printer in the 1700s and 1800s to print your ballot, but they didn't, but government paid for that. Government arranged the ballot. They decided who was on it, and they administered the elections. We're not too far, Kevin, from private entities administering elections because there's money to be made. Why did ES&S, that fateful night, that second meeting, that final vote, where the Democrats, like all except for Mr. O'Brien, or Bob Werner, sorry, it was Bob Werner, stood up and said no, they all fell in line and said, sure, we'll spend all this stupid, crazy amount of money. And then they ran into the hall and hugged and congratulated each other and then went out to a fancy dinner after, because there's money to be made. Since when did something so functional to any democracy, let alone the United States, which, by the way, this week, folks, go to the Home Group Facebook page. You'll see the article I posted. According to the United Nations, the United States is a failing democracy. We are sliding backward. And the rest of the international community knows it, sees it, and has now reported on such. We are a failing, declining, sliding democracy. If there wasn't money to be made, Kevin, wouldn't all of this go away?
I don't
Or
know.
at least a great deal of it? If the most private part of it was we go to George the printer on the corner and he prints our ballots for us, and county workers take those ballots to different places, and perhaps the worst, I know I just said the worst would be the printing, but the worst, is that we buy some barcode readers. A lot of this goes away, doesn't it? But there's money to be made.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to think about the kind of paradigm shift that we would have to have, because technology has become such a part of our elections, from, designing the ballots, generating a PDF that you can send to the printer, all the way through to, counting the votes and reporting the votes on a website. There's direct links that make all that stuff sort of streamlined. And I think when you have that technology, then that's, you've either got to, the government has to either build it or someone outside has to. So you either have to take the technology out, or you have to decide that government is going to do this piece.
I don't want government making my computer,
right,
or my blue jeans, or my Jeep, or even the windows I put in my home. And I'm not sure necessarily that I want them to make the voting machine either. But we talk about decentralization a lot, and the de-escalation of government, the destruction of government, the privatization of government. Isn't this one area where government should be completely in control? Maybe not manufacturing the machines, but gosh, sure as hell having The government has manufacturing control over things it makes for the military.
Right.
It directly oversees it.
Yeah.
Directly oversees it. We send FDA inspectors. I'm getting my brain's now. I'm getting all hyped up, and my brain's running faster than my mouth. We send FDA inspectors into meat packing plants to make sure that the meat isn't moldy or falls on the floor and is riddled with disease. We test pharmaceuticals to make sure that they won't do silly little things like kill you. Isn't this exactly the kind of process the government should be in control of, from A to Z, from soup to nuts, bonnet to boot?
I'm with you there. And, there's some good legislation that's pending that would provide more oversight and more rules. Currently, it's a very hands-off kind of approach. The voting machines all have to meet, well, no, I take that back. They all do meet a federal standard called the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines. And the first word of that gives you a big clue, right? It's the voluntary. Now, the reality is that the vendors all go and apply for it and try to, get certified that they meet these guidelines, because so many of the states require it as part of their requirements. So in Pennsylvania, you must get certified. It's not voluntary for Pennsylvania. You must go do the voluntary certification. It's mandatory to get the voluntary certification. But the reason why is that, there's this idea of federalism, and that the states each get to decide for themselves. And so the federal government is very reluctant to step in and to say, this is how things are going to go. These are the standards you must meet. There's a real tension there. And the states are very protective of their rights. They don't want the federal government to come in and tell them how to run their elections. It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or otherwise. I can tell you the secretaries of state, are very defensive of this. They want to make sure the federal government is not telling them what to do.
When I first voted on an ES&S, XL, it was that 2019 general election. And this happened to me again in was it the 2020 primary? There were 2 election cycles that this happened to me. And I now cannot remember which were the 2. Maybe it was the primary in 19 and then the general in 19. That might be right. That I filled in my votes. Big shocker. I'm glad you're sitting down. Straight Democratic ticket. What a shocker. What a big surprise, right? Went to hit the button to register my vote, and the screen filled in the Republican ticket. I had to back out, and I did it again. Submit, and the Republican ticket filled in. Third time was the charm. This time, Democratic all the way down, hit the button, and that time it stayed. I was that close to getting the judge of elections and any other official I could possibly find. Because I was going to, you and I were in those meetings. I was good. This was not going to be a peaceful thing. I was going to make a bloody show of it. How am I to know, even if it's not just me specifically, if I'm just Joe voter, how do I know really at the end of the day, especially due to the internet connectivity of those machines, which has been told to us that they are not done that way, but you got to program them somehow. And you program them usually with a laptop, and that laptop is connected to the internet. Just Joe voter, even if that wasn't me that happened to, and it happened in 2 cycles. How do I know that really at the end of the day, when I finally hit submit and I feel like, and the screen might actually show that my votes didn't move over to the other column, that was actually what was recorded, that the books actually say that when I voted for President Kennedy that President Kennedy actually got my vote. The
Right.
screen told me I voted for President Kennedy, but did President Kennedy get my vote?
Right. So if you were in a county that had hand-marked paper ballots, you could do an audit at the end to confirm that the paper you put into the box matches the totals, right? That came out, that the result was the result you expected. If you are a place like Lehigh, where they use a lot of touch screens, then you would need to, sorry, maybe it's Berks. They use a lot of touch screens. You would have to check the paper as it comes out of the machine to make sure that the paper is right? And then also do the audit. If you are in Northampton and you have the Express Vote XL, then you have this additional concern where you have to check the ballot, make sure that it's right. You also then have to do the audit afterwards. But there's a lot of interaction that can happen between the ballot marking device and the tabulator that can, make you question whether or not what you saw and what you wanted to vote for actually made it into the ballot box and got counted. So I don't want to go into like specific, nitty gritty details there,
Right.
but it is, it's a real question. It's one of the reasons why, this is a machine that I don't recommend.
I think one of the biggest problems with this, I know you have to leave us shortly, and I hate to, let me ask you this then. We're going to jump around a little bit,
Yeah.
Sad. One of what seems to be used all too often as a solution to these things. Hey, the machine's not working for me. Oh, well, here's a provisional. Just fill that out.
Mm-hmm.
Or I applied for a mail-in, I never got it. Now here's provisional, fill that out. I got my mail-in, I filled it out, it's in the security envelope, everything's actually really quite good with it, and I've never dropped it in the mail. Hey, here, we'll invalidate that and give it a provisional. But we don't count provisionals. They are not always counted. They're the last to be counted. And in fact, if Kevin and I were running for office for the same position, 100,000 people voted, and I was leading him by 85,000 to 10,000 with 5,000 provisional ballots out there, those provisional ballots would never even be bothered.
No, they do. They do count them. They absolutely do count them. The problem with provisionals is that you are putting the fate of your ballot in someone else's hands to determine whether it counts or not, right? And it may be better than not voting at all, but it's, the eligibility of that ballot still has to be determined. And it can be disqualified on a technicality. So, there's a real reason to be concerned about provisionals, but, they are required to be counted before the result is certified. So you can trust that your eligibility will be figured out, and it will either be decided not to count it or it will be counted, but you can be sure they will make that choice. You just got to hope it's, a choice to be counted.
Well, I'm learning something. I'm happy to learn what I don't know. I am not perfect, God knows. So I'm learning something. It was my understanding, and again, correct me all that is necessary. Provisionals are the last set of ballots to be counted, and if the number of provisionals will not change an election outcome, that they are not counted. Correct me.
Should not be true. If it is true, I think that's probably a violation of the law. I think that is not supposed to be the case. So I've not heard of it happening. If it is happening somewhere, it shouldn't be. Every vote should be counted. When you get the final result, it's not just who won. You actually have the tally, and the tally has been checked and double checked by that time period before certification to say that this is the total that we're going with as the official total. So those ballots should be counted for that.
How do people, I am part of a lawsuit here in Pennsylvania, as you well know, to decertify these machines.
Right.
To have the Commonwealth itself say, no, these machines are not safe. They are not secure. They should not have been offered, let alone purchased. Where are we?
So for
The
a
wheels of
year,
justice are painfully slow, and this
yes.
certainly has been. But where are we with that?
So from the time that we filed the lawsuit, which I think the amended complaint was like January of 2019, there's lots of procedural steps and paper that gets swapped back and forth. Finally, the judges had a hearing on it in, I believe it was late October of 2020, right before the election. And then we didn't hear anything. And almost an entire year went by and we didn't hear anything from them. And then finally they said, okay, we've looked at the objections from the defendants and we believe that the case can go forward. We don't agree with their reasons that it can't go forward. We believe the case can proceed. And so therefore we start what's called the discovery process, which is where each side gets to ask questions from the other side, gets to ask them to produce documents. And then from that, you build your case. So that's the place where we are now. We have our claims. We've already said, what we think are the problems, but we will now get corroborating, information showing that is the case, and build the case. So
What is your hope?
Starting that process now.
What is your hope for that particular case? What is your hope for the John Lewis Voter Protection Act? What is your hope for the restoration of the Voting Rights Act, which the Supreme Court gutted? And of course, within about, 5 or 10 seconds of that decision, the old Confederate states started making moves toward restricting voting. What are your hopes for voting going forward generally?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many things to be concerned about, and we kind of have to walk and chew gum at the same time. So, I am concerned about this machine that I think violates Pennsylvania law. So I'd like to see it decertified and to see those counties, use something that does meet Pennsylvania law. For all these, the voting rights and the protections, all of the things, redistricting, all these things that we have going on.
Yeah, geez, we didn't even get to touch gerrymandering,
right?
Redistricting.
Like there's so many of these things that need to be dealt with. And at the same time, we're dealing with misinformation still. We're still dealing with, people who are out there raising money and spreading misinformation, trying to work their agenda, whatever that may be, whether it's a political agenda to try and gain a partisan advantage in the next election, or whether it is purely financial or clout or whatever it is that they're after. We're still dealing with that too. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and definitely, your listeners can play a part in that. They can pay attention to all of these different areas and pick one that feels, up their alley, because it's an all hands on deck kind of moment. And
it seems to me, Kevin, that no matter what your issue is, if it's student debt, if it's environment, if it's taxes, even if you're, a right-leaning person and don't try to hide conservatives. I know you're out there and you listen. Even if that's your biggest thing, property taxes, unionization, industrial jobs, infrastructure, whatever your key issue is, it's absolutely irrelevant if you can't vote. Would you agree?
Yeah, and even more than that,
it all starts there. If you can't
if you
vote,
don't have trust in the vote, right? Like that's the thing, is the erosion of trust, so that somehow you win the victory, you win the election, but then you're called illegitimate. Like that's a problem too. So I think it's elections, but it's also the the authority that comes from winning an election and being able to say, look, the people decided it was a fair race and it was decided, and therefore this is what we're going to do. This is the path we're going to take. That legitimacy is it's not just the election, it's the legitimacy that comes with it.
It would seem to me that if your vote was so meaningless, and didn't matter, and you couldn't trust it, and it's not going to be counted, and elected officials never do what you ask them to do anyway, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, blah, 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 word salad, then an entire political structure wouldn't be trying so damn hard to keep it from you.
Yeah, for sure.
Or is that just a little too much common sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think
the Republican Party would not be trying to strip you of your vote, or at least strip everybody that they don't think is going to vote for them anyway. So we'll just take their vote from them if it didn't mean something. If that vote was so damn meaningless, they wouldn't be trying so hard to steal it from you, or keep it from you, or legislate it away from you.
Yeah. I mean, if you can nip at the problem in the bud, right? If you can basically disqualify voters before they ever have a chance to vote, or if you make it so difficult for them to vote, then, you can sort of swing, lean an election your direction before the vote ever actually even happens. So
you and I are not constitutional experts. Before I just turn the floor over to you and let you go have dinner, we are not constitutional experts, and I don't play one on the radio. It seems to me that the universality of the right to vote in the United States of America has been validated in 3 key places. The 14th Amendment, which extends, and the language actually says, extends the right to vote to freed slaves. The women's suffrage movement, which extends the right to vote, which again presumes that there is a right to vote. You cannot extend a right that doesn't exist. And then the motor voter bill, which actually states in the language, such as every citizen of the United States has a constitutional right to vote. None of these have been directly challenged in the Supreme Court, but at 3 different occasions, legislatively and constitutionally, we have reestablished the constitutional right for legal citizens, not everybody on the planet, but for citizens of this United States to have the right to vote. Am I wrong?
No, I would add a 4th one to that list, which is the Help America Vote Act, that came out as a result of the problems that Florida had in 2000, but it has very large amount of protections for voters with disabilities to say, you cannot be denied your right to vote just because you can't, mark a ballot. You have to be able to have polling places that are wheelchair accessible, that kind of thing, and making sure that the franchise is open to anyone who wants to use it. That was a real problem. So I would agree with your first 3, and I would add that 4th one. I think that we keep trying to become a more perfect union and to improve on our democracy. And I think making sure that voters can vote and that it's we reduce the burdens on them to do so and facilitate it for them. I think that's when we're at our best as a country.
I know you have to go. You have been, again, sir, very kind with your time. I'm sure your family is waiting for you at the dinner table, and I keep holding you. You said 6:45, and I kept rambling.
That's all right.
I want to just throw the floor open to you. Is there anything that we did not get to mention? Is there something that we kind of started talking about but didn't quite wrap up? And how do people follow your work and reach you, contact you, tell you their story? Maybe just as simple as ask a question, or just how do people find you, follow you, watch your work?
Yeah. So probably the easiest
when
way
you're not
is on,
hobnobbing with everybody on MSNBC.
probably the easiest way is on Twitter, and I'm K Skoglund, KSKOGLUND. I don't post a lot, but I do post when I think that there's something interesting or something that is worth paying attention to. But I would just say I would encourage people to get involved. I dove into this because I saw a need. I my background is cybersecurity, and I read an article many years ago that was talking about some of the problems with voting machines, And it was like, this is something that I can help with. This is a place that I can contribute. I'm not a great, organizer. I'm not the kind of person to follow legislation through or some of those things. And other people have those skills. Everyone can bring to it what their skill set is. So I would encourage your listeners to, if they're interested, find a niche. There are places that we need people to be working on this, and just be a poll worker like that. Honestly, it will teach you so much about how the process works, and it will be a huge service to your community to be there and to help facilitate voting, to make sure that it's done fairly, to tamp down on misinformation about it. So if you do nothing else, consider being a poll worker.
I believe this is kind of sad because it really actually speaks to how lazy I can be. My mailbox is really not near my apartment, my townhouse, and they don't check it nearly enough. And I finally emptied out the thing yesterday. It looked like we'd been on vacation for a month. I mean, the stuff was like really jammed in there. And I think I timed out. Apparently I won my election for judge of elections.
Hey.
Which sadly, because I wrote myself in, basically, all I did was write myself in. But the letters that I got said that I needed to respond by the 18th of November.
Uh-oh.
They only took the letters out of the mailbox yesterday.
Reach out to them and see.
I'm not sure, but I need to check. I might actually be a judge of elections in my precinct.
I like how we came full circle, though. We started out talking about the kindergarten election that you lost.
Yeah. Well,
we're ending by talking about the election that you won.
And it only took me 52 and a half years to do it.
There you go.
Well, no, -5, 47 and a half years to do it. Pretty cool. Yeah. I've lost. How many elections have I lost? I think I'm only 2-2 in election. No, I ran for student council after that. I want to say I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of 2-2. I've won a school board election. I won a judge of elections, and I've lost a school board election and lost my kindergarten election.
I'm also a judge of election. I just won my election in November as well. In Pennsylvania, for those who don't know, we elect the head poll workers. Yeah. So I also won, and it's
remarkable.
It's a hard day. It is a lot of work to be a poll worker.
Long day.
God bless anyone who does it.
Yeah.
But it's very fulfilling too. I do it every year because it's
I have
important.
To check.
It's important. It's important work.
I have to check. I think I'm going to have to contact Mr. Muncie and see if I'm still, because I didn't respond on time, which it just feels like I just had homework that I never.
They may not have replaced
that I never handed in, so I don't know. I have to check that out. But thank you, sir, for being here yet again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As I warned you the first time you were here, I will warn you yet again. The bad news for you, sir, is that you are part of the family now. So we are thrilled that you are so. So we will ask you again, we will ask you to please come and visit us yet again, especially as we go into this, there's a cliche in elections and in voting that every election is the most important election in the history of all elections. Not so sure that this might not be the single most important congressional cycle that I can remember, perhaps since the New Deal, or maybe the first midterm cycle after the assassination of President Kennedy. This might be the single most important congressional cycle, or maybe a cycle following the Civil War, but I mean, it's epic. It's an epic thing. And that's why an entire segment is not only trying to not protect the vote, but strip it from you so that we can predetermine the outcome. I just don't see any other way that you can honestly look at it. So as we proceed into 2022, I will be checking in with you again. We will be checking in as a program, and please know, if something was to crop up in the middle of a week or something in between programs, and there's something that you want to share here, just let me know, and you can visit us anytime. The door is open to you at all times.
Thank you. That's very kind.
thank you again for being here. Go enjoy dinner. And
Okay.
please stay healthy, stay safe, you and your family, and have a wonderful and safe and healthy holiday season. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You too.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
That is Kevin Skoglund with the Citizens for Better Elections, the president and chief technologist. It might seem like almost a bit of an odd time to talk about elections, in December. We just finished a cycle and the next one hasn't started yet. And there's never a bad time to have these conversations. Nothing that we ever want to see happen with our government, a policy position, a set ethics rules, campaign finance, environment, bringing jobs back home, you name it, whatever bumper sticker you might believe in is irrelevant if you cannot vote, period. Why are Republicans so without fear of repercussions at the ballot box? Because the game has been rigged. Trump was right about something. The elections are rigged, just not the way he wants you to think. There are members of the House of Representatives who could, to borrow a Trumpian term, shoot somebody dead straight in the head in the middle of a street on live TV, and they'll win. Because the districts are so carefully drawn. If your vote didn't mean anything, then the former political party known as Republicans would not be trying to take it from you. And yes, that's exactly what's happening. You're trying to take it from you because they fear you. The last place left, quite possibly, the last place left where the poorest among us and the richest among us are dead level equal is in that ballot box. Now, we know that when the Supreme Court completely rewrites the rules and says that money is speech, but yet we all have free speech, we should all have free and equal access to that speech. We cannot have equal and free speech when money is not distributed equally. Therefore, money cannot and should not equal free speech. I very much encourage you all to go to the, I'm going to forget the name of the website now. It's the End Citizens United website. It is Move to Amend, movetoamend.org. I will try to type it in the chat when I can. Movetoamend.org. You can go there. Sorry for the sniffles, folks. I have a tiny bit of like a cold or something. It is not bad, and it is not COVID, and it's not it's not pneumonia. It's nothing that's going to get to me, but it's just a tiny little thing that's there. Movetoamend.org. I strongly, on a borderline of beg you to go to Move to Amend and sign the online petition there to end Citizens United, which is something, by the way, Congress could do with legislation. They have failed to do it, which is a sad thing, but they have failed to do so. It would fix it. But that said, I kind of got myself off on a tangent. it might be the last place in our society where the poorest among us and the wealthiest among us is dead level even. And that is in the ballot. Oh, grab the wrong mouse. And that is in the ballot box. Meaning that the poorest person can go into that ballot box, they have one vote. The richest person can go into that ballot box and have one vote. Now, the richest among us can sway opinions with our millions and billions of dollars, and a poor person cannot. But at the end of the day, when you walk in that ballot box, we still only have one vote each. Go and vote no matter what. And I beg you to go to movetoamend.org to end Citizens United, to make money so that the Constitution would read that money is not speech. That money is not speech, because it is not free and equal. And corporations are not people, by the way. I encourage you to do that very, very much. Do it. And never, 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 never miss an opportunity to vote. Never, never, ever miss an opportunity to vote. Your vote is your voice. Use it. Whether you do mail-in, provisional, show up to the ballot box and walk in that booth, always, always, always vote. Always. Never, never, never not vote. It's your voice. If it didn't mean anything, they wouldn't be trying to take it from you. On the line is our sole regular caller, sadly. Randall, welcome to the program.
It's good to watch you as usual, Jeff, and I really enjoyed Kevin's input tonight.
He's a really, really smart guy, and he knows how to make these very daunting topics quite simple to understand. Let's put it that way. Not dumb it down. I don't think he dumbs it down, but I think he makes it easy to comprehend and easy to understand.
Oh, I totally agree with you on that, Jeff. Totally. Yeah, a lot of things you two were talking about tonight are complicated, but he puts it down to a level that I think vast majority of people totally understand what he's talking about. And I wanted to say thanks for putting that last part in about always vote. I've always voted in every primary and every general election here in Pennsylvania since I got the vote through the amendment that lowered the voting age to 18, and I was 20 when that happened back in '72. So yes, please vote, and that's about all I have to say tonight, Jeff.
That's it. Are you feeling okay?
The 3 points you brought up and the 1 point he brought up, that Ken brought up, on the most important things to protect the right to vote, to expand the right to vote to Black Americans, and then the amendment to expand the vote to women in this country. And he was talking about a law that was passed in 2000, I think.
The Help America Vote Act.
Yeah. Actually, the past 1992 law, the Americans Disability Act, that's what requires polling places to be accessible for those with physical disabilities. It's that law that requires a braille ballot, for example, for a person with no vision. So that law is one of the most incredible pieces of legislation, in my opinion, that's been passed in my adult lifetime, if you will.
Randall, let me ask you, as someone who's been involved in not just politics, but democratic politics and politics in general for a long time. Let me reiterate a piece of what I consider to be common sense, and you tell me if it's common sense. If your vote did not mean anything, if it was so useless and so invaluable and it doesn't matter, and it's just one vote, who cares? You don't need to do that. And politicians are all the same, they don't listen to you anyway, blah 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 blah. So if all of that was true, why would the former political party known as Republicans and the wealthiest among us and the biggest corporations, why would they be fighting so hard to take that vote away?
It's because they want to set up, well, I think the former Republican Party absolutely wants to set up a tyrancy in this country. And the rich, they want to set up an oligarchy in this country, or further along the lines of an oligarchy controlled government. And of course, Citizens United gave them a sword to do that by buying, in my opinion, too many corporate legislatures, whether in the state or in the Commonwealth or whether in the federal Congress. And it's 100% Republicans that take the money. And
yeah, but isn't it, Randall, isn't it?
There's too many Democrats that do the same thing. They take the money and they don't vote for what is the right thing for their constituents.
Isn't it a little simpler than that, though? In that, if your vote is so meaningless, why take it? Why try to steal it? Why try to legislate it away from you? Because the truth is, it is important. It is powerful. It does mean something. 100 people in the room, the 1%er and the 99%. 99-1, we vote, we win. It's simpler than that. I agree with you, by the way. The former political party known as Republicans have gone full authoritarian. There's no question. It's a death cult. COVID doesn't mean anything. Killing black people doesn't mean anything. We're all up in arms about aborting babies, but we'll also do nothing about gun violence. And we love capital punishment. And food inspections, they're expensive. So if the food you eat kills you, too bad. Same for drugs. Pharmaceuticals. Oh, those are really, really expensive. So if they kill you, it's all right. There's more of you. It's a death cult. It's a full-fledged fascist, authoritarian death cult. And the one thing that remains still level best equal is that when I go into a voting booth, you go into a voting booth, George goes into a voting booth, Franz, Kristen, or Jeff Bezos, we still only have one vote each. So what's one way to nullify that? To take it from you and somehow try to return this country to a pre-Civil War society where only white male landowners could vote.
Exactly. The pre-Civil War, you don't have to be a white male. You had to be a landowner. So that stripped probably 90% of the people's right to vote right then and there. And that was set up by the Constitution when it was written. to be that way. Southern states that revolted and took us to a civil war, they didn't want poor whites voting anymore. They wanted black slaves to be able to vote.
They wanted to count them as population, but not vote.
Exactly.
All right, my friend. Thank you for being part of the program. You know I love it when you call. Only 2 more live programs, sir. Only 2 more live programs for the year.
I know.
And then we take a big 2-week break. And we will have to decide, actually, during that 2-week break, the brain trust that is this program, if we're going to start our Wednesday night program. You still in favor of the Wednesday night program?
I'm absolutely in favor of the Wednesday night program.
If I do it, though, it's going to be at like 9 p.m. because there's other talent.
That's wonderful.
There's other talent on Hot 101, so I can't be on the radio until 9
Right.
p.m.
Right.
All right, so you're voting. You continue to vote for the Wednesday program. I should put up a poll.
9 p.m. for me is great. I know a lot of people that my wife goes to bed before 9 p.m., but I'm sure
Well,
other people do so.
She's probably smarter than she doesn't have to listen to suffer through listening to this program. She's going to go to bed and check out. She might be the smartest one among us. But listen, thank you for being here. We have 2 more. I will say this to everyone while Randall is on the phone, because I want to make sure he hears it, because he's on the phone and he listens so much more when he's on the phone. I'm getting silly now because we're getting to the end of the program, I think, and so I'm getting a little goofy. But that said, we have 2 more live programs in 2021. That is a week from now. 5 + 7 is 12. That is December the 12th. Our guest is going to be State Representative Rick Krajewski. I'm really, really looking forward to that. Our second state rep. I told you all back in, when was he on now? It was in September, I think it was, when Rep Cerisi was on, that he would open the door, I thought, to a lot of state elected officials. And it's been a drip, not a running faucet, but a bit of a leaky faucet, but we're getting there. So our second state level official will be on next week. When was Rep Cerisi on? I feel like I need to look for that now. Gosh, was that back in August? Oh my God, it was. Yes, it was. Rep Cerisi was on in August. Wow. Okay. Wow. Oh, it's been a quick year. Holy cow. This year has flown by. Yeah. So he was on back in August. So our second rep will be, and that is Representative Rick Krajewski from Philadelphia County will be on next week. And on the 19th, we will have a kind of year in review, maybe wear an ugly sweater, have an eggnog. I don't like eggnog. Maybe something else, hot cider or something. Round table. I believe Sergeant Mack will be back with us. I think Connor will be here. I need to talk to Christopher. I believe Zach Fowler will be with us again, and we're just going to have a drop-in session. As many people who want to come in and hang out as possible, friends of the show, and just kind of have a year in review, serious but yet relaxed chat, and kind of look back at the in some ways the catastrophe that was 2021, but yet also maybe talk about the good things that happened in 2021. So that's our next 2 weeks, and then we will not be with you again until January 9, when we start our 3rd calendar year and we enter the last quarter of our second actual date of birth, so to speak, year. We'll be wrapping it. We'll begin to wrap up our second full year, our 3rd calendar year. So that is coming up in the next, month, basically. That's our next month here on the program. So I expect you to be there, sir. I expect you to stay healthy and be with us for all of that fun stuff.
I hope I will continue to be safe and continue to be healthy. And you know, I've got my 2 vaccinations for COVID back in. I finished up my second at the end of March, and a month ago I got my booster shot, and I got my yearly or my annual flu shot. So yeah, I'm as prepared as I can be.
Sounds good to me. And thank you, sir, for continuing to share and invite folks to the group. I'm going to look this up very quickly. We our group. I have been talking for the several weeks now. I think possibly even for about more than a month, about inviting folks to be part of our home group page. You see the graphic right there on your screen, which also has the phone number 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. When I finally say goodnight to Randall, the phone line will be open and we would like to hear from you. You see the graphic on the screen there. And if you're on the radio, that other side of information at Facebook, it is a public group. Anyone can be a part of it. We are at 948 members. So 31 minus 5, George. 26? We have 26 days. I just did that in my head. Do you see the smoke? If you're watching on TV, you can see the smoke coming out of my ears from the gears running while I did maths. 26 days to get to 1,000. That is our goal. We would like to get to 1,000 members by midnight, December 31st. We want to celebrate the new year with 1,000 members. So whoever hears this, if you are with us live, if you are watching on YouTube on the recorded, if you are at Instagram, LinkedIn, if you are at Patreon, if you are TikTok, if you are watching the recorded version in the timeline of any of the 100 places that the show has been shared this week, join our group. Let's get to 1,000 by when the ball drops in Times Square. Let's get to 1,000 members. That is my plea to you all. 948 members. If you all invited one person, we would easily break 1,000. So I implore you all to do so. So Randall, we will talk to you next week, correct?
If God willing, yes.
Sounds good, sir. Please continue to stay safe. You take care of yourself. You know, you can always reach me through Facebook, and you take care, and we'll talk to you next week when the rep is on.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
I did it again. I went to hang up the phone, grab the wrong mouse. I do it every time. I hope you're not doing shots at home every time I pick up the wrong mouse, because you'd be flying by now. About 10-ish minutes. I think we'll try to wrap up at 7:30. George, sir, do you have anything that you wish? Holy cow, that's extraordinary. Wow.
Sorry, I'm multitasking right now. I'm building a computer for somebody. So.
Oh, is that all you're doing?
Yeah, that's all.
This is how you spend the program? This is how easy our program is for you to be a part of, that you can build a computer while it goes on. It's pretty good stuff.
I'm always building computers.
I approve.
Thank you. No, it's not a Mac. I'm building
Oh, God.
I'm building a Dell. I'm sorry.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it rhymes with hell. And
Yes, it
it's
does.
just what you think.
For a reason.
Yeah, it's just what you think.
Apples taste good, Dells don't.
That's right.
Um,
Yes, sir.
so we're gonna wrap up around 7:30. We've told you what is coming up in the next few weeks, actually pretty much the next month here on the program. We have made the ask of you to invite someone to our group. We really, really would like to get to 1,000 by the end of the calendar year is the arbitrary date that I set. It is not a it's nothing hard date or official date or whatever. Just a date that I think would be fun to be to 1,000 by the end of the calendar year.
I will endeavor.
Say again.
I will endeavor to find
Well,
those other people.
Yeah, again, we have 948 members. I mean, if we all invite one, I think we can get 52 out of that group. That's a pretty low percentage. If you are a Democrat in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we are very, very lucky that our program quite literally goes across the country and around the globe. I need to speak to Democrats, progressive Democrats, New Deal Democrats, Square Deal Democrats inside the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It is time for you to please consider getting involved in your party. Elections for party positions will begin. The process can begin now, but it will begin in earnest after the holidays. Petitions to be on a ballot will be in February, and the election to become part of your Democratic Party, municipal, county, or state, or state really, because you can do all three, will be on the date of the Pennsylvania primary. If you are unhappy with the way the Democratic Party operates, if you are unhappy with the positions it has taken, if you believe it needs to listen more to you, then instead of lobbing Molotov cocktails from outside and burning down the house, how about joining us and getting inside the house? When you burn down the house, you are left with two things: a pile of ash and nowhere to live. So join us, get involved in your Democratic Party. Become part of it, make it better, make it listen. Now, I have been a Democrat my entire life, so it is easy for me to talk about and, dare I say, even defend the Democratic Party. But I also know that my party is not perfect, not by a long shot. It's not. In the same way that we are, as citizens of the United States, as residents of the United States, as living beings drawing breath in the United States, that we should be endeavoring to build, quote unquote, more perfect, because the founders knew that we would never be perfect, a more perfect union. We need to build a more perfect party. And that means getting inside and returning the Democratic Party to its New Deal, working class, union class, Square Deal, progressive roots. You do that by getting inside. You can do it as simply as being a precinct committee person, where you are the Democratic Party representative for your neighborhood, sometimes just as small as a few blocks in your neighborhood. Knock doors, meet your neighbors, talk about the values that are the Democratic Party. We want you to do some crazy radical things in the Democratic Party. We'd like you to eat We'd like you to keep a roof over your heads. We'd like to fund schooling. We'd like you to be able to afford to see a doctor. We are crazy like that. If any of those things are important to you and mean anything to you, then I beg you to get involved in the party. If you do not know how, contact me, Jeff Kennedy, on Facebook. Find me on Messenger. Even if we aren't friends, you can send me a message. Not Facebook friends. We're friends. We know we're friends. We love each other. You can send me a message through Messenger, and I will help you do that. Let's talk about it. Let's explore it. Let's find out how it can be done, because it can be done. Let's make a more perfect party. A couple items I want to mention before we end. Some big, big happenings. I very rarely, too rarely, and perhaps really this is what the Wednesday show should turn into. Let's kind of go back and do a week in review. I don't really fancy doing that. I like to get into the topics that our guests bring to the table, but let me mention two big happenings from this past week. There are more than two big happenings. Let's just be blunt, but there are two big ones that I want to mention. And one is going to sound like I'm jumping on the bandwagon, but it's a bloody big topic. It's a powerfully large topic. The Supreme Court hearing the Mississippi abortion case this week is a big damn deal. And all of the folks who watch the court and who know much, much, much more about it than I will tell you that the court has flat out signaled that it's going to overturn Roe. What I would like to ask you to do, by the way, Congress could fix this with a piece of legislation. So I'm asking you to call Congress. You have no control whatsoever over the Supreme Court. They don't care what you think, especially the 6 fascist justices, all of which have become wealthy through corporate money. The paid off, owned, bought 6 conservative justices. They don't care what you think. There is no contacting the Supreme Court to have your views aired, period. They don't care. And let's talk about the hypocrisy of fascist Republicans. Again, I mentioned it during the program. We are pro-life. We care about life, except if you want to have an assault weapon and go to a peaceful protest and shoot the protesters because you don't agree with them. That's okay. Maybe you want to drive your car over people at a peaceful protest because we don't like what they're protesting about. That's okay. We're going to force you to carry that baby to term, but you're so broke you can't feed it. Well, we're not going to help you with that. That just makes you a taker. Living wage that might keep you alive, might keep a roof over your head. No, we don't care about that either. There is nowhere left in the United States where you can afford a 2-bedroom apartment on even a $15 minimum wage. So we don't care about that either. Conserve the environment because the air is killing you, the water is killing you, because factory farming is killing you. Inspect food so it doesn't kill you. Inspect pharmaceuticals so they don't kill you. We don't care about that either. This is not a pro-life party. They have used this issue to energize what is largely a group of fake religious folks to make them come to the ballot box. I believe Roe will be overturned, but Congress can fix it. The Constitution gives Congress the power to regulate the courts. It also gives Congress the power to insert one very simple line in any piece of legislation. Because judicial review is a power the Supreme Court took upon itself, it's not in the Constitution. Congress can insert a line into any piece of legislation that says, this legislation shall not be subject to review by the judiciary branch. And that is exactly what they should do now. You fake conservatives, you fake evangelicals, you fake pro-lifers, standing out there screaming about keep your damn government hands off my Social Security. And when it comes to vaccinations and wearing masks, my body, my choice. Well, why the hell are the women's bodies your choices? They're not. You hypocrites. You liars. What's good for me is good for me, and what's good for me is what I tell you. Do as I say, not as I do. The next time some old, wealthy white senator knocks up a young girl and she has to get an abortion to hide it and to save his political ass, you better believe that young lady will be able to get an abortion somewhere. But if you're poor and black, to hell with you. That's what this is about. If Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz and Ralph Reed are so damn worried about women getting pregnant, get a vasectomy, you sick bastards. It doesn't even hurt. Because, by the way, none of these women are getting pregnant immaculately. That's only happened once in human history. Somebody's impregnating them. I am desperate for a solidly blue state to mandate vasectomies. You will see white Republican men in this country freak out like they haven't since the Civil Rights Act. You want to stop making babies? Stop getting women pregnant. It's effing biological science. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. But that's not politically expedient. And besides, we're rich, entitled white men. We want to be able to spread our seed wherever we feel like it. Well, if you believe that, then leave the women alone. It can't be your body, your choice when you're talking about wearing a mask or getting a vaccination or wearing a seat belt. Or if you're here in Pennsylvania wearing an effing helmet when you're on a motorcycle, for God's sake. But then you tell 54% of the population whether they can or cannot have a child or not. For God's sake. This is so damn fundamental, it's frightening. There's another thing that happened this week that you need to know about. The current sitting governor of the state of Florida is Ron DeSantis. He has ordered his Florida State Department of Justice to find a way. His legal counsel, the counsel inside that department, to find an extra federal way, a method outside the jurisdiction of the federal government for him to create his own personal police force. Yes, you heard me. He has ordered his legal counsel to investigate and then find a way that he can form his own personal defense guard, his own paramilitary that would be responsible to and answer to only him. I have talked on this, an act, by the way, that has not happened since the Civil War. Even the Second Amendment talks about a well-regulated militia. Mr. DeSantis doesn't want a regulated militia. He wants a personal and private, answering only to him militia. If he were to get this militia, what do you think would happen the next time he was up for election in Florida? He will deploy that militia to voting places. He will deploy that militia to Democratic voting places. Big D Democratic Party voting centers like Orlando, Miami. Let's say by some wild stretch, Mr. DeSantis doesn't get reelected. He actually loses that election, but still has a well-armed paramilitary reporting only to him in his lame duck sessions. Do you honestly think he's going to give up power? It is another step, and not a small step, but a major step toward something that I have warned you about on this program over and over and over again, and it's not hyperbole. And that is a shooting civil war, a second shooting war in this country. When one public official has control of his own army. This is frightening. And if he's able to do it, you don't think Greg Abbott in Texas is going to do it? Or the man-child fool in Mississippi? Or Arkansas? Or Iowa? Nebraska? No, wait, Nebraska elected a Democrat last time, I think. I know the one in Iowa is pretty authoritarian. Montana, Greg Gianforto in Montana, who beat up a member of the press because he didn't like the question and got away with it. This is serious, folks. Really serious. You're talking about a governor of one of the largest states in the union who wants to create, somehow within the law, create his own private little army. Oh, and by the way, the taxpayers will pay for it. It's frightening. It should be frightening to you. Quite properly, should be frightening to you. Well, I got worked up there, didn't I? What else should I bring up before we say goodnight? I think that's actually it, believe it or not. And that's only two of the things that came up. I mean, please go to the group page if you haven't. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there. articles all week, articles about the transfer of power in Germany, really the end of an era in Germany as Chancellor Merkel steps down. There's articles in there, continuing articles about NASA launching a new probe that will actually quite literally smash into an asteroid to break it apart and figure out what it's made of. Another mission by NASA to figure out the first asteroid deflecting mission to really start to explore whether we can protect the planet from the end of civilization. The Earth will get hit with another asteroid. It will. In fact, it's hit with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of tons of space debris every single year. Most of that debris is small. Some of it burns up in the atmosphere. Even if it's larger and doesn't completely burn up in the atmosphere, by the time it reaches ground level, it's dust or so small or impacts in very, very remote areas that we don't even know. The Earth actually adds mass every single year. So NASA is launching a mission to see if an asteroid that would be destined or on trajectory to hit the planet can be redirected. That's a very, very important thing, obviously, for the continuation of the species if we don't destroy the environment first, which we're well on our way to doing. But if we don't do that first, this would be really a neat thing to continue to follow. And these are not hard stories to follow, folks. You know, pretty much all of the main media sites where I repost stories on the group page from The Guardian, the BBC, the CBC, really do, foreign sources do a much better job of continuing to follow the stories that they report on. So keep up, and you can always go to the NASA website actually and follow these things as well. I happen to have the NASA app, which is a very, very good app. You can just tap on it and there's a list of all the current NASA missions and you can keep a hold of it or keep tracks on it that way. It's actually really, really simple. So we have articles in there about that. We have articles about, there was a really exciting article this week that the planet has added more renewable energy than in any other year in its history. So a good trend, actually some good news, that yes, the planet had the planet-wide need for energy is real, it is palatable, it is tactile, you can see it, you know it, you can feel it. But the planet has added more green, renewable sources of energy. I shouldn't say sources, that might be the wrong word for it. We've added more solar and wind than any other year in our history. And that continues to be an upward trend. Each year we break that record. And we did so again in 2021. So that's a good that's a piece of good news. And I beg you to check out all these articles. And those are just the ones that I can recall. I suppose I could kill 13 minutes, right, George? I guess we might as well try to kill 13 minutes at this point.
Yeah. Another NASA or another piece of NASA news. In 2 short weeks, the James Webb Telescope.
Yes, thank you. I was going to get to the Webb
telescope. Be launched.
Correct.
December 22nd, I believe, is the launch date for that.
And what does Webb do?
Webb is actually I believe it's a Newtonian telescope where it has multiple mirrors like Hubble, but it can bring in more light, and I believe it's a
planet hunter.
Well, yeah,
essentially it's a planet hunter. For all intent and purpose, it's a planet hunter.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sadly, there are still quite a number of folks who just don't get the benefit of NASA. And NASA has given folks on Earth way more than just Tang and memory foam and Velcro, even though it gave us all those things. We have learned so much technologically from NASA. When President Kennedy first challenged us to go to the moon in a 10-year time frame, although at that point it was almost 8 years, entire new industries were created, entire new technologies were created. And there are technologies that we still continue to build upon. One of the ways that the moon capsules had to be made is that we needed to figure out how to shrink the electronics, how to make them smaller. How do we put large pieces of computer-driven memory? Yes, there was computers in those early capsules and spacecraft. We didn't have silicon chips. Believe it or not, yes, some of it was vacuum tubes. But we had to figure out how to create these automated systems, or some of these automated systems, some safety systems, backup systems, emergency landing systems, all of it. We had to learn how to eat in space, how to eat. I mean, these technologies, they drive industry. So the space, I'm a fan of the space program. I believe in it deeply. And I am dramatically against, I am fervently against the continuing privatization of space. It bothers me. Space exploration should not be subcontracted out. It's NASA that took us to the moon. It's NASA that launched Hubble. It's NASA that launched the 2 Voyager probes that are no longer even in our solar system. The first 2 pieces of man-made equipment to exit the solar system. NASA did all that. NASA did that. It's NASA that should be going to Mars, not SpaceX. It's NASA that should be going back to the moon, not Blue Horizons. That's not the democratization of space. It just isn't. There is one, for folks here at home, there is $66 billion in the infrastructure bill for the establishment, re-establishment, I should say, of passenger rail from the Lehigh Valley to the New York metropolitan area and to the Philadelphia area. Democrats deliver. Republicans obstruct. They say no. They yell. They scream. They use fear. Democrats deliver. Period. One bad NASA story. NASA announced on Thursday it has awarded $415.6 million to Jeff Bezos' organization, Blue Origin, to help them develop privately owned and operated commercial space stations. Why are we using $415 million of taxpayer money to hand to corporations to help them develop what will most certainly be for-profit private space stations? That doesn't sound like the free market to me. That doesn't sound like responsible spending, fiscal conservatism, small government. It sounds like we're picking winners and losers. So why am I throwing all these Republican buzzwords at you? Because they're all bullshit. That's why. Because they're all crap. They're
Sounds like Wayland
buzzwords.
Utani to me.
They're buzzwords to scare you. We believe in that. No, you don't. No, you don't. I tell you a lot on this program, and so has Franz, so has George, so has a lot of our guests. There are very few blanket statements in society. In a nation of 330 million people and on a planet of just shy of 8 billion, there are very few blanket generalizations, very few 1 or 0, yes or no, up or down, one way or the other type questions. I am postulating to you now that this is a blanket 100% up or down, yes or no. Republicans are full of crap. They're not about governing. There was a senator this week who had a private conversation leaked. You know what's hilarious, George? I'm watching the closed captions run on Facebook in delay, because that's how I monitor the comments. I actually got starred out the word crap. That's pretty funny. I find that to be quite hilarious. There was a senator who got a piece of audio from him leaked this week. Please forgive me, because I don't remember which senator, but it almost doesn't matter as they are interchangeable. They're like sparkplug. Who said we just need 18 more months of chaos? That's I don't know why 18 months. They really only need about 8 more months of it. And then perhaps the quote was taken out of context insofar that it doesn't need to be. They only need about 8 more months of chaos and complete obstruction so they can take Congress back. That's not governing. No to everything is not governing. It is merely obstruction. And it's obstruction for power, and power means money. These folks are employees. They are employees of the richest 1% and the corporations. Republicans are not a party. It's not a political party. It's not. It's a corporation. And the merger of corporate and state is fascism, period. It's the definition taken from the man that created it. It's his own definition. The unbridled use of government power to further corporate aims. Benito Mussolini, the creator, the generally accepted creator of the fascist system. They are not a governing party, folks. They're not. And I have not been in my life a vote blue no matter who kind of guy. We're the only party left, kids. If you're an independent, a non-affiliated, if you're not registered to vote, or if you're a disaffected Democrat, or hell, if you're an embarrassed Republican, please come to the Democratic Party and be a part of it. We're the only ones that are trying to govern. Why did it take so long for Democratic majorities in both houses of Congress to pass legislation that the American people believed in by almost 2/3, more than 2/3? Why were we having so many internal debates? Because we're the only party even having debates. Joe Biden could cure cancer tomorrow morning. Republicans will vote against it. The only thing that Joe Biden could propose that Republicans would support would be the elimination of taxes on the top 1% and the elimination of corporate taxes. And then they'd probably continue to bitch anyway that he didn't eliminate capital gains taxes. That's who they are. Tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. Oh, there's a recession. Cut taxes. The economy's super strong. Cut taxes. The government is starving of money. Cut taxes. We're offshoring millions and millions of jobs. Cut taxes. The environment's on fire. Cut taxes. It can't be the same answer for every damn problem. It can't be. It doesn't make sense. It's not common sense. It doesn't fit. You can't have a roaring economy, cut taxes, and then when we're in a depression, cut taxes. The same answer doesn't apply to both. That's all they are. That's it. Fear, division, hate, obstruction. No. And tax cuts. That's it. The 3 richest people in the United States have as much wealth as the bottom 220 million. 3 people. Those 3 people could have paid. No, wait, let me fix that. It was 20. The number's 20. The 20 richest people in the United States could have paid for the entire $1.7 trillion infrastructure bill and still had money left over. That is not a fair society. And it's unsustainable. And we can do better. George, any last thing you would like to add before we say goodnight to the good folks?
If DeSantis gets his own private army, would it be Hale Scroob from Spaceballs?
If only it were that light of a
Um,
topic, but it really isn't. It's a frightening topic.
Yeah,
It should
it is.
scare people.
It does.
Truly, truly should scare people. I mean that with all my heart. It's not hyperbole. It should scare people. A publicly funded, armed to the teeth, lawless group of exceptionally well-armed and trained people who answer to one man.
Sounds familiar.
That's frightening.
Yeah.
Yep, sounds like the brown shirts.
Yeah.
Sounds like Crystal Knock to me. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yep.
8:01 Eastern Time. We are going to say good night to you. Let me please remind you. I mean, unless the phone rings in the next few minutes or so, but let me please remind you, call Congress. You can call Congress. I tell the story all the time. When the Republicans had total control of the federal government, they had the Supreme Court, Trump was in the White House, and they had both houses of Congress. And they tried to repeal the entirety of the Affordable Care Act. And they still couldn't do it because you called them. You called, you emailed, you wrote letters, you visited local offices, you protested peacefully. You can still do that. Call your congressperson, call your representative, call your senator, and tell them what you think about any topic. Be polite, do not swear, make it quick, about 30 seconds, and tell them what you think. 202-224-3121 is the congressional switchboard. I'm starting to twist my own tongue up over my gums. 202-224-3121 is the congressional switchboard. If you do not know who your member of the House of Representatives is, if you do not know who your senator is, a very nice receptionist / operator will answer your call. You give them your zip code, and they will connect you to the right representative. Keep it to about 30 to 60 seconds. Remember, a staffer is going to answer your phone call, except in Republican offices. Usually it goes to a voicemail and no one checks it. If you call a Democratic member, you have a much higher probability of actually getting a person. That person might be an unpaid college intern. Be polite. If you know where the local office is of your representative, your state representative, your state senator, your member of the House of Representatives, your U.S. senator, visit them. Drop them off a letter. Be polite. Be nice. Be kind. Many of the folks that work in these offices are also unpaid volunteers. We don't need to threaten them and scream at them, even if we disagree. I'm bringing a letter for the senator, telling him my story about how I can't afford my prescription drugs. I'm bringing a letter to the House member, to the representative, about my child's school district, or about my nephew who was hooked on opiates, or my uncle who was a veteran. Let's do that. Get engaged. Go ahead, Randall.
Yeah, a couple of real quick things because I know you're running over for time. One, I want to make a correction of something you said, Jeff. The microchip, which replaced the transistor, was invented in 1963. The first use of the microchip was on a compact computer on all of the Apollo ships that went to the moon and returned. And the reason why it was developed and used is because we didn't have the throw weight like the Russians did to send bulky, heavy vacuum tube computer to navigate to and from the moon. So I just want to make that correction on this earlier statement. Number two, he was libertarian fascist in a lot of ways, but in other ways, on social issues, he was not. Robert H. Heinlein, who's the dean of science fiction, back in the 50s, he first wrote that, he said, why do we have to go to space? Why do we have to expand our population off planet? He said, you can't put all the eggs in one basket. And when you were talking about
Heinlein wrote Starship Troopers, didn't he?
He wrote Starship Troopers, but he wrote Time Enough for Love.
If you really watch Starship Troopers with a critical eye, it's a disturbing movie. It's really about a trumped up, no pun intended, a trumped up war against an alien species for the sole purpose of profit, technology improvement, and conquest. And you'll notice throughout that movie, they refer to people as citizens. Good citizens join the military. Good citizens are involved in this fight. It's a disturbing movie.
You could not vote unless you were a vet.
It's a disturbing movie. I encourage people to watch it with that kind of critical eye. I first watched it because I just happen to be a sci-fi geek, and I'm proud to say it. I'm proud to say it. But as I watched that movie, it occurred to me, this is really deeply disturbing, because the whole basis and definition of who's a citizen and who isn't, what individuals have value and those that don't are dependent on whether they fight or not. And if you really watch that movie, the war between the humans and these insect-like aliens is created out of whole cloth. It's a trumped up, fake, media-driven conquest war. The insects, if I recall, Randall, don't even get off their own planet.
No, that's not true. They had created multiple hives and multiple planets and multiple star systems. And the beginning of the book and the beginning of the movie was they hit our World Government Center, which was in Brazil, with an asteroid. And the major character that went out and joined the army the next day, both his parents were killed in Buenos Aires. And that was Buenos Aires, which was hit by the asteroid. You need to read the book, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm a lousy reader.
I've got a 2,500 volume of sci-fi books.
Oof. Crikey.
Yeah, and I've read a lot of them multiple times over the decades. But yeah, I started reading sci-fi in junior high school.
Well, I legitimately, this is a topic for a different day, but I legitimately have trouble reading. I obviously can read, but I do have a lot of trouble doing it. I tend to bounce all over the page. It takes me a long time to read anything. The concentration level is pretty rough, but it's, that's a topic for another day. What else did you have before we want to say goodnight to everybody? What else did you have, sir?
Getting back to the private, publicly funded paramilitia army that DeSantis wants to create, so he can get around. I don't have full control over my Florida National Guard. Yeah, that was a good point you made. The brown shirts. That was the start of Hitler's drive for his dictatorship and for the ultimate Holocaust that we all know truly did happen.
Absolutely.
And
can't argue with that.
I graduated from college as a history major, so and concentration was on European history.
What else you got, or was that it? What else you got?
Just I love being a member of your Facebook group. I love that you put all the things from NASA on, and all the Guardian and BBC things that you put on. And I know if you look, I always give a like, whatever, to everything that is on your Facebook page.
And let's just remind everyone too, and by no means must any of you agree with me. I love when you don't agree with me. Discussions and debate breeds understanding. It breeds education. We inform and educate each other when we don't agree. Because I have to make my case, you have to make yours. And I learn about you, you learn about me. And it's how we begin to re-sew together this society. We have been diced and dissected and split into so many small groups, and all because of power and money. And we're better than that. We're better than that. There's a reason why it's the economic top 1% and the 99%. You don't think there's any Republicans in that bottom 99%? You're in there, folks. The same as a struggling family farmer in Columbia County who might vote Democratic is no different than the struggling family farmer in Iowa who always votes Republican. The problem is the one that's always voting Republican is voting against your own self-interest. It's not self-interest when it's good for 99% of the population. That's not self-interest. That's majority rules. The founders created a government based on rule by the majority, not suppression of the majority and not suppression of the minority. The filibuster is not in the Constitution. The founders did not agree with it. It is protection of the minority with a Senate rule. It is rule by the minority. Nothing in this country has ever been set up that way. Think about even a silly Twitter poll that you might take part in. Which do you prefer, ketchup or mustard? 10 people vote, 6 people vote for ketchup. Ketchup wins. Mustard doesn't get to filibuster and change the rules. Majority wins. But you have an entire segment, a former political party, actively working to change the rules to keep a minority in power over you. The Republican majority that's going to be taking over here in what is formerly known as Lower Saucon Township, but now Bethlehem Landfill Township, they're not going to govern. They ran and they spent the money they spent, the money that was given to them by the landfill, $75,000 for a local township council race. They did that to rule, not to govern, but to rule, to lord over, not to govern on behalf of. It's bordering on medieval what's going to happen around here. Anything else you got, Randall? We need to say goodnight to the people.
Yeah, my biggest concern is fascism by the former Republican Party. And yeah, I'm kind of scared, Jeff.
Let me tell you something, Randall. Maybe I'm presupposing what you're saying. You fear fascism. It's here. It's already here.
Oh, I know that.
Do we finish? Do we complete the journey into complete authoritarian fascism, or do we stop it? That's the fear. That's the key. That's where the teeter-totter is resting on the wedge. Do we go all the way over, or do we go back? And the founders feared this. They feared this. I would postulate to you this is why Jefferson and Madison fought so hard for the progressive tax system, the estate tax, and the inheritance tax, because they did not want, and I'm quoting, the establishment of a permanent upper class. When you can hand down that wealth generationally, they become the new lords. And that's exactly what we fought a revolution against. Fascism is already here. Does it completely take over? The Republicans are the fascist party. They are the white supremacist party. They are the party of no, and they are the party of death and wealth, but only for a certain people. So stop. Folks, stop. You don't have to agree with me on every policy position. You don't even have to become a Democrat. But I'm telling you, this isn't hyperbole. This isn't shock radio to get you to listen. It's exactly what's happening. It's what's happening. A governor wants a private army that will only, read the article, only report to him and him alone, not the lieutenant governor, not the attorney general, not the head of the state police, not the head of the Florida State National Guard, just Ron DeSantis. Paid for with public tax dollars, answerable only to him. What is small d democratic about that? What is constitutional about that? That's your party. That's Republicans. That's who you are. And I think there's a lot of well-meaning Republicans who know it's wrong. It's time for you to leave the tribe. It's time for you to leave the clan. You may not agree with Democrats on policy positions, but at least we want you to vote. At least we still believe in a constitution, and at least we still believe in a democratic republic. We are powerfully close, dangerously close to the end of the American experiment. What happened on January 6th was not just a culmination of everything building up to January 6th. It was a start. What do you call a failed coup? Rehearsal.
I call it a precursor.
It is.
to-
It's a rehearsal.
to-
That's what it is. It's a rehearsal. That's exactly what it was.
rehearsal, I call it precursor for total despotism in this country. And again, I'm going to tell you, Jeff, I'm scared if that happens. I know when the political camps start, I'm going to be taken off the street away from my family, because I'm not going to shut up as it's happening. I'm going to keep speaking out against that until they take me away.
Well, I sort of think if I keep speaking enough against the Republican majority that's going to take over in our township here after January 1st, I wouldn't be shocked if the harassment starts here either. I'll film it all. Don't worry.
Well, make sure you
Film
got-
it. Wait a second. Film it. I just told you how old I am. I'm going to film it.
Cameras. Make sure you've always got body cameras,
Oh,
and you run your smartphone on any interaction with the police, because I follow a lot of things. I follow First Amendment auditors, and the only really good one out there, in my personal opinion, is the Long Island auditor. And he's been arrested so many times and has to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to court, whether it's civil case or whether it's in a jury trial, to defend our First Amendment rights that the Supreme Court ruled years ago. You, on public property, like a sidewalk, you can film anything you can see from public. And I don't know if you follow those type of things or not. I'm curious to know that. Do you or do you not? follow those Facebook.
Well,
type
I don't. Yes and no. I think I know where you're going. Let's also recall now that there's been, I want to say it's 12 states. Oh God, I think it's 12. I think it's 12 states, but I very well could have that wrong, folks. But I want to say it's 12 states, 12 red states that have made it legal to kill protesters. So if there's a Black Lives Matter protest, a voting rights protest, an abortion rights protest, a rally for a Democratic candidate, if other folks walk up and decide to just start beating the hell out of them and somebody kill, that's perfectly okay. If they're marching in the streets and you want to run into them with your car, that's okay. 12 states have done that. What happened to the First Amendment? The right to peaceably gather, protest, and petition your government for redress. So in other words, it's okay for the Proud Boys, but not for Black Lives Matter. Is that what we're saying? That's authoritarianism. That's totalitarianism. That's fascism. That's oligarchy. That's an us and them that is the end of the American experiment. We believe what we believe, but you can't believe what you believe. And if you do, we'll kill you for it. When Heather Heyer was killed in Charlottesville, Virginia, run over by a right-wing extremist because he didn't like what she was protesting about. There's 12 states where they're trying to make that legal. Some of them have made it legal. Now, it's still up to local law enforcement to enforce it, but some of these states have made it legal. You don't like that they're walking in the street, they walk next to your car, turn, hit them, kill them. Oh, no problem. They were protesters. They were anarchists. The judge in the Rittenhouse trial, you can't call them victims, but you can call them rioters. Rioters at a peaceful protest? It's because you didn't agree with them. So then we make them rioters. It's a slippery slope, a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous thing. Very, very dangerous. Scary. Germany in 1936. Randall, we have to go, brother.
All right.
I said it was ending an hour and a half ago.
All right. Okay.
I said that an hour and a half ago.
Listen, you have a good week and you stay safe.
You do the same, my friend. You stay healthy. Get your vaccination. If you didn't get your booster shot, get your booster shot.
Absolutely. That's why I said that earlier.
Yeah. Did you? I'm sorry. Did I miss that? Did you get it?
Yes.
You got the booster. Okay. Sorry about that. I probably lost that in my brain somewhere. Yeah, folks, let me tell you.
My grandson that's 7 and 8,
Mm-hmm.
the 7-year-old is 2 weeks past his Pfizer, that age group vaccine, and my oldest 8-year-old grandson got his first Pfizer, and all my 3 daughters and 3 son-in-laws who got their boosters.
Good.
So,
and let me ask you quick. I know I said I was going to make you hang up. Let me just ask you very, very, very quickly. How did you feel after the booster? Did it do anything to you physically?
I had, injection site pain for maybe a day. But I always get that because I don't like needles. I have to force myself to get a needle.
Right.
And that
Okay.
goes back to childhood. And I was jerk. And when you jerk on the
Yeah. When you move.
needle,
Exactly. Yeah. When you move, you're right. I mean, when you move, that's what happens. The important part, though, the third shot, and I did not know this, is I'm happy to learn what I don't know. Randall's corrected me quite a few times tonight, so I'm happy to learn what I don't know. But very quickly, it's 9:20, 8:29. We gotta get out of here. The third shot was a half dose, half the dose of the first and second shot. I did not know that. I thought it was a complete full bore, another shot. So I am with you, sir. I had soreness in my arm, and I still actually have a tiny bit of soreness in my arm. Certainly nothing is keeping me from doing anything. And I was really tired. I mean, really tired. Like barely could keep my eyes open, kind of tired. But by the middle of the day, Friday, I went to work. Well, I went to work. I was only, I think, maybe a half hour late. I was working. We were busy. I was fine. Third shot is nothing to be afraid of, folks. Well, none of the vaccines are anything to be afraid of, but certainly the booster is nothing to be afraid of. So I highly, highly encourage you all to get it. But Randall, sir, I'm going to hang up. We're going to get out of here. It's 8:30.
all right. God bless again.
Hey, stay safe, my friend. I mean that with all my heart. You stay safe and healthy down there, okay?
I totally.
All right, my friend. We're losing you a little bit too. So, all right. We'll talk to you soon. All right, 8:30 Eastern time. That is the end of the program. Please, folks, if you have missed any of tonight's program, it will be available tomorrow on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is That Other Side of Information. It will also be at Instagram, That Other Side of Information. I will put the link for it on Twitter, That Other Side of Information. Also at That Kennedy Talk. You go to twitter.com, search for That Other Side of Information. You'll find us. I will also put it at, oh, good, George, put it in front of me because I'm looking off to the side here on my cheat sheet. My fancy picture of my cheat sheet, by the way. I will put it on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jeff Kennedy. We'll put a link for the show there. Of course, it will live on in infamy in all of the groups and places where it has been allowed to be posted. But I really do think that the best place to find it, if you've missed anything, if you want to go back and review anything, if you want to listen to it all over again, if you missed anything, if you want to get a very good chuckle out of Randall properly putting me in my place and correcting me quite a few times tonight, YouTube really is the best place for that. And George will get it up there. It'll be up there by tomorrow. Please have conversations with your friends and neighbors. Check on friends and neighbors, especially the older friends and neighbors among us, if they need help with groceries or picking up prescriptions. If you're in a place where you're getting snow already, raking leaves, shoveling snow, maybe something just as simple as taking the garbage cans to the curb to be picked up. Let's check on each other. Let's build those neighborly bonds again. I have found very, very quickly here that the Christmas decorating that we've done seems to have brought a lot of the friends and neighbors out to check out everybody's Christmas decorations. And it gives us a chance to talk and get to know each other again and build that sense of community. We can do this, folks. We are a community. We are a society. We are not a group of only rugged individuals. We may have individualism. We may have things that make us, we definitely have things that make us individuals. We might have preferences that are purely individual, but we are also part of a community and we are part of a society. And let's rebuild those bonds again. For associate technical producer, I need to send this text really quick. I hope you are listening to the credits. DJ Lex, who is the big guy, the big man behind Hot 101, listened to the program tonight. I know he listens, but he actually texted me through the program to compliment us on the program tonight. And that means a lot. He's a really good man. What a voice. Wow. Do I wish I had that kind of voice. That is a voice. Well, he's got a face for TV, but boy, does he have a voice for radio. My goodness. Boy, I wish I had a set of pipes like that. I'll tell you what. But I just wanted to make sure he was listening to the credits. So listen, for associate technical producer Lynn Dare, for everyone at TCP, Marquise, Whitney, Andrew, Taekwon, I think I got everybody. I hope I did. I hope I didn't forget anybody. And for DJ Earl and of course DJ Lex at Hot 101. We're so proud to be part of these two families. And Alexander just popped up in the chat. Oh, mate, you missed the entire thing. Go to YouTube, you'll get it all. We're so proud to be part of these two families. We really, really are. It actually means a great deal to me to be part of these two families, TCP and Hot 101, because let me just be blunt. I don't look like a lot of the folks on either one. Let's just be honest, okay? I'm just being honest. I don't look like the DJs on Hot 101. I don't look like the hosts at TCP. And yet, here we are, family, sharing our programming, sharing our points of view, sharing our audiences, and building community. And building it digitally, but we're building community. It means everything to me to be part of these two families. It really, really does. It means a lot. It's not just again, it's not just smoke. I'm not just blowing smoke here and kissing everybody's bum. It means everything to me. You know, these are, I don't look like everybody else that works at these places. Let's just be blunt, okay? But yet they have welcomed me and made me part of their families, both these families at Hot 101, of course, Hot 101 first, and then TCP. And it means a lot. It really does. So for DJ Earl, DJ Lex, for George Dare, and for Kristen, and of course, April Riddick, who I'm hoping to get here in studio, perhaps even, to be part of our roundtable on the 19th. Means a lot. Everybody who is a member of the Kennedy Effect family, both in the production side and you on the watching and listening side. You guys mean everything. We would not be here if you were not there. So until next week, and again, remember, big guest next week. State Representative Rick Krajewski from Philadelphia County. Thrilled to have another state level rep visiting us here on the program. So that's it. I think I named everybody. If I forgot anybody, you can scream at me later. Send me a comment and say, you forgot me, and then I'll remember next time. That's it for us for this week. We will be back live next week, December the 12th, 5 p.m. Eastern. Kennedy Effect will return live. If you missed any of the program, go to YouTube or find it here on Facebook and any of the 100 places where we've shared the program. We love you. Please take care of yourselves, and we will see you next week live, December 12th. Rep Rick joining us then. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Everybody stay safe and stay healthy. We'll see you.